Okay, welcome to the November 30th meeting of the Goffstown Budget Committee. It is 6:01, so we're going to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we're going to do a roll call, starting with Lauren.
Lauren Dukas.
Jared Talbot, School Board Rep.
Stacy Belmore.
Brian Mazer.
Samantha Kearns.
Melanie Renfrew-Bebert.
Allison DeCesare.
Doug Pounds.
Richard Manzo. Peter Georgiantis, Selectmen's Rep.
Laura Stevens.
Frank Hobbs. Joe Alexander. So we have a quorum, so with that, we're going to move right into approval of minutes. So these were minutes of the joint meeting with the school board. Danielle, do we have to approve these because it's a school board meeting with us there? So we have to approve us just being there, or, because they had their own minute taker, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep, so you're just essentially proving that your attendance roster appears correctly,
okay.
and if there were any questions by the committee, that would have been captured by that minute taker.
Okay. So do I have a motion on the 10-23 minutes?
So moved.
Anybody?
To accept.
Move to accept by Laura Stevens, second by Brian Mazer. A discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, abstentions? We're unanimous. All right, 10-4-23, joint meeting with school board.
Motion to accept?
Motion to accept from Stacy, second by Melanie.
What was the date, Joe?
10-4-23.
Gotcha.
Any discussion there? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Richard Manzo abstains. The rest say aye. All right, November 2nd, regular meeting on the school budget. These were budget presentations.
What was the date again?
These were budget deliberations, November 2nd.
Okay.
Seems so long ago. Has everybody had time to review them?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Where did the more recent ones live? Were they emailed out for the minutes to be reviewed on? I know it was a little while ago. I'm just having a hard time locating them to refresh my memory.
I believe they're emailed out to the committee and they're also posted online.
Okay, I just didn't know if we had received, if it was just a post or if we had received these specific ones, because I actually was having a hard time finding them.
Okay, well, we can hold off to December 5th if you'd like.
I don't wish to hold up anyone else if I'm the lone I can't find them person, so I can just abstain.
That's okay. We'll hold them off, and we'll just have them at the beginning of the agenda next meeting, so we'll make sure they're sent out again. Those three other meeting minutes. So, new business, we have 3 presentations tonight, and we're going to do the same thing like 2 weeks ago, where we jump directly into deliberations while the presenters are here in case we have extra questions. So with that, I'd like to welcome up the Sewer Commission. Tim, Lynn. Thank you for coming. So that's on page 9 of your, or tab 9 of your binder.
Good evening. My name is Tim Redmond. I'm the chair of the Goffstown Sewer Commission. With me is Lynn Pooler, who is our secretary, a full-time employee. How would you like me to proceed? Take out the sections that we don't have control over and just discuss them, let them know which ones we do and don't?
Well, I would explain any notable changes, whether you have control over them or not, and then we're going to move right into deliberations. It looks like 4 pages, so I'm okay if you're briefer than
I'll be brief.
longer.
So the first sewer administration page everyone's looking at, regular wages, commission, stipend, FICA, Medicare, retirement, unemployment compensation, workers' compensation premiums, and benefits are all figured out by the finance department. These are for our employees, so we don't have control over them. They are run through finance department. Employee development is below that. That is for classes for our employees to attend for training. Auditing services are for our books, obviously. Legal services, if we need them. Banking services, once again, is from the Finance Department. Office supplies, postage, those generally run for the billing. We used to bill 4 times a year. We bill twice a year now, so we cut down on our postage and our supplies for that part of the budget. Computers and communications, we are presently looking at getting another laptop computer for our employees. The one we bought, how many years ago was it? 3? I think it was 3 years ago. We bought it on the town's purchase through the police department, so we didn't put it out to bid. And we have another employee now, so there's a possibility that we might need to buy another computer. So I believe that we did have an increase.
Well,
right?
the 2024 increase in software prices as well.
Okay.
And then a new rugged computer versus a regular computer, which runs about 6,000 versus 1,500.
And those are the same that the police department buys, so we get on their bid and get one through them. Debt service in both cases we have no debt service, so we have no principal or interest at this time. And property insurance comes through the finance department as well. So if you have any questions on those items, you want to do them one line at a time?
We'll
or-
finish with your presentation, and then we'll just go through as a committee after.
Okay. Sewer administration, sewer operations, excuse me. Once again, we're back to wages, overtime, longevity, FICA, Medicare, retirement, unemployment, workers' compensation are all through finance. Clothing and uniforms, we have a uniform service. However, the guys have turned their uniforms back in, and we use that money to pay for their winter clothing that they need. We buy them a jacket, we get them winter boots and gloves and different things. So we don't use a uniform service, but we use that for them for their needs for clothing to do their jobs. Consulting services is a big number. It's very, very brief about this. 2 years ago, we lost 2 full-time sewer employees, Mike Yurgo and Mike Walton, both retired. Mike Yurgo used to do all of our planning in the DPW office and draw all the plans for all the new sewer constructions, and then we would just have engineer services just take a look at them. Well, both of those guys retired. They were not replaced by the same type of individuals. We have guys that read the meters and do the pumps. We don't have any engineering services in-house anymore. So we use a consulting service now. We've always used Hoyle Tanner. One of their principals is Mike Trank. He has been working with us to do sewer design and to have contract management for bids and the whole package for getting a project together, getting it bid, and seeing it through to completion. So our projects are all run through consulting services.
And we put a little bit more money in there this year for some 2024 projects that we have budgeted.
Yes. Contracted services, once again, we use that primarily for the VACCON service. Public Works and DPW, Public Works and Sewer used to share expenses on the town's VACCON unit, but it's gotten to the point where it's so expensive to maintain and repair that the Public Works Department is not using it with us anymore. I don't think they're even using it. We use a state bid contractor, Belmore Maintenance, out of Bedford, and they do all the line cleaning and maintenance for our sewer lines, as well as emergency calls if we need a VACCON truck.
And you don't see a lot of actuals in there so far because we are just starting, this is the time of year where we start doing it, so we just started jetting the lines now, so there'll be invoices to follow.
And just jetting the lines is when we take 1/3 of the system every year, and we clean 1/3 of the system on a 3-year rotation. So what they do is they go into the manholes, they clean them, then they run high-pressure water down all the service lines and the float, not the service lines, those are from the houses, from the main lines between the manholes to make sure they're all clean. And all the manuals have to be documented, and a report has to be filed with DES as well as the cleaning. So this is all part of a DES mandate, as well as normal maintenance. Diesel fuel and gasoline are for the 2 vehicles we own, the sewer department owns. We own a diesel pickup and a gasoline pickup. Fleet maintenance is for repairs on the vehicles. We had a a big expense last year, which, is it showing up
Yeah,
in there?
the invoice, it all came in after the budget process, so you don't see the expense in here.
From 23?
It says 624,000, but it actually should be 8,191.
So we spent $8,000 on one of the pickup trucks fixing it at the end of the year last year, and the invoice didn't come in time for it to be captured on the year-end totals. So it got carried over into this year. But that's a finance thing. They take care of it for us. They help us out with that, so.
But that's why you see the $7,200 budget for next year and no actual technically.
Equipment maintenance is for this equipment that we own. We own pumps, and we own generators, and we own all kinds of equipment that the guys use, and lawnmowers to cut the grass with. We used to have that paid for by a vendor, and we now have the fellows cutting the grass ourselves, so we're not spending money on a vendor for lawn maintenance. So the maintenance of the equipment is budgeted for $10,000, and that way we have plenty of money to fix stuff when it breaks. CIP projects are on a 7-year program with us. They are sewer line replacement and manhole replacement in sections of town which have been redlined for areas where the lines don't work because they're the old clay pipe that are 2-foot pipe that are just joined with a little rubber gasket. And over time, they tend to do this and move, and they don't work correctly. So we are targeting all of our clay line in town, mostly in Pinardville, actually. It's down in the area out behind the crab place there. What's it? Shaken Crab, out in that neighborhood, where they're all very flat. So we're trying to put new PVC pipe in and get those so they're working better. We had 7 years of projects last year left, so we're down to 6 at this time. So we're hoping that we're going to get all those projects wrapped up, and then we can readjust our CIP numbers for down the road. But at this time, we're 7 years out. VACCON expenses, we only keep $1 in there because we do have an arrangement with Public Works that if in an emergency we could not get the vendor to come in, Public Works will help us out with their machine.
No, not anymore. They're selling it.
Just auctioned it off. Just auctioned it off. So that line is not going to be any good anymore. We don't have it anymore. And Manchester O&M charges, those are operations and maintenance. 2 things are built into that charge. One is our daily flow, which is metered at the wastewater plant in Manchester. We are a 4.11% stakeholder in the Manchester wastewater treatment plant, which means that anything that they do at the wastewater treatment plant, we share in 4.11% of their costs. So we came in to start the year at $600,000 we thought we were going to need. However, we did get an updated report from Manchester. They are starting 7 new wastewater projects over the next 6 years, and next year alone, we have to have an extra $125,000 just to pay for our fair share of the costs for their upgrades. And most of their upgrades are dictated by the federal government, Clean Water Act, or whatever you call it. So they have to do these upgrades. We're responsible for over 4% of it, so we need that extra $125,000 added to the 6 that we had budgeted from last year.
And again, the actuals don't look that high. It's because they bill for a lot of the projects at the end of the year, so we'll be getting invoices for those projects.
They wait and bill us at the last minute. Okay. Okay, that covers the operations. Next thing is the sewer pump stations. Contracted services, we have to clean these pump stations annually. We bring a truck in, they wash them all down, and make sure they're sanitized and everything's functioning. Operating supplies are chemicals that we need, as well as other things that go into operating a pump station. Electricity is how we power the pumps. Propane is how we heat the building, and I believe the generator, and our generator, or our emergency generators are propane powered in some cases, but not all. We have to have town water down there, so there's a water bill. Telecommunications is because we are moving towards having something called a SCADA system, which is a system that is able to be read by our sewer employees on their telephones. When the alarm goes off, They don't have to drive all the way down to the wastewater, any of the pump stations to find out what's going on. They can get information directly on their phones.
And we went over budget this year for that, but we're not budgeting for it again next year because it was a one-time upgrade to the East Union Station, pump station.
Hazardous materials, keep $1 in there in case we need to use the line. Wet well maintenance is what I stated earlier. That's when we have to pay a septic contractor vendor to come in and pump out the wet well. Solid waste disposal, chemical expenses. Diesel fuel it just always runs at $1,500 because the diesel fuel, the generator at the East Union pump station is our main pump station that pumps the wastewater to Manchester. And that pump station has a diesel generator, not a propane generator. Equipment repairs, we always carried a lot of money in this line, and we were asked to reconsider that amount at $100,000 a year, even though we've only used 2,800 of it this year. So we decided to cut it in half for going into this year, and we're going to look at it and see if the $50,000 is going to be adequate. If it's not, if it's still too much, we'll look at cutting it again next year and reducing that number. The pump station upgrade, we have just finished that. That is the Elm Street pump station, which is the one if you're leaving the village past the Maple Avenue School, heading out to Grassmere. There's they just did a big pump station repair down there at that pump station. However, we have another pump station which we are also working on towards, and that project will be budgeted in the future. So that concludes our explanation of our lines, and if we have any questions, we're happy to try and answer.
Thank you, Tim and Lynn. Are there questions? Stacy?
Yeah, on your, how are we gonna read these lines? Under sewer administration 53420, the equipment maintenance, I guess my question is gonna be similar to how you cut your other equipment line. Look, you budgeted 10,000 for the last few years, only used 27. Do you know, have you ever hit this 10,000?
We view it differently, because you never know when something's gonna break. You have to have money in the fund, and if you don't use it, seeing as it's an enterprise fund, it just gets returned back to the enterprise fund account. So we don't want to, we have money with the trustees. We were asked by this committee to look at taking some of our expenses and reducing them and moving some of our money into the trustees, which we can access at any time. We haven't had to access money from the trustees yet, and I know it's not a big process, but we don't really think that on equipment maintenance, we should under budget and then have to run to the trustees for a $10,000 request or something small, because I consider $10,000 in the equipment line to be a small amount, because which line were you in? Were you in admin?
Under, yeah, sewer admin.
Operations.
Have you ever hit this
Oh,
10,000?
it's an operation?
Operations.
Okay, so that operations is the vehicles and equipment that we use for mowing and pumping and different stuff that they have. That's what that line feeds. The other one, the pump station one, is the one that takes care of the pumps that are actually in the wet wells, and those pumps are $15,000 each. So if a pump fails, or two pumps fails, it's a major expense immediately.
But that's not this line.
That's not that line.
Right. So have you ever hit the 10,000 in this line?
I can't tell you, because I don't think we ever have it, but we would have raised it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jared?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a general question, and more for some of us and people at home. Do you have any revenue streams that come in?
Yeah, we're an enterprise fund. I failed to mention that in the beginning, and I'm sorry for not saying.
I forgot.
We are not taxpayer-based.
Thank you.
Probably should have been the first thing I stated. I usually do. Our revenue stream is our sewer use charges to the customers that are in our system. When new people come into our system, they have to pay accessibility fees to actually hook up to our system. And we do accessibility fees. It's kind of a pay-it-forward program, so that we're not taking all the users that have been on the system since some of them since the 70s when it was put in, or actually the 50s when it was put in, I believe. When was it put in? I think it was the 50s. It doesn't matter. But the point is that rather than charge ratepayers for some of this stuff, we have the accessibility fees, which new customers are being asked to pay, or told they have to pay, to get hooked up to our system. We can also use our accessibility funds for projects that increase or improve our system. So some of these projects that we're doing, we've been talking with finance, and we are going to try to use some of our funds from our accessibility accounts to pay for some of these projects, or a portion of some of these projects as well. But we have to increase the availability for sewer. So if we have an 8-inch line that runs through your neighborhood and we're going to replace your line, if we upgrade it to a 10-inch line, technically we fall under the availability to use those funds, as opposed to only using our revenue stream. We are actually looking at, and we are going to notify our customers, we are going to have a rate increase, a percentage rate increase for the next few years, because we did with the cost of these new projects being extremely higher than they ever were before for construction, we figured out that in 6 years the enterprise fund is going to be broke, because we're dipping into the enterprise fund to pay the differential on our income from the users. So we are going to correct that with a small rate increase for the folks in town that are on sewer, and we're going to have a public hearing about it. We'll do the whole thing. But the point is that we have to do it, otherwise the sewer enterprise fund will be broke in 6 years. And we can't have that, because when a pump station goes down, it's over $1 million to replace a new pump station. There's a fund you can go to at the state and borrow money, but it makes sense to have our own funds. We've had them for years. They just carry on and sit there, but it's not like we're charging and putting money in the fund all the time and charging more than the sewer customers should pay. They're paying what we need, and we actually are running short at this time.
Tim, what do you anticipate the fee going to?
We know what it's going to be.
It's a $50 increase.
We're raising it
for the year.
So $25
A normal
every
home
6 months.
that is on, the least amount is $450, or $400 a year.
Right now.
For $200 twice a year. It's going to go to $450 for the whole year. So it'll be $25 each billing cycle.
Okay.
And we're sending out the notices 6 months in advance so that people have time to prepare for it. So we know a lot of folks are on fixed incomes in some of these areas. We want them to know that why we're doing it, and we're going to have a public hearing so people can come in and talk if they want to.
And Tim, can you, sorry, one more. Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to, how much you're receiving in impact fees from the new development and what you're doing?
We don't get impact fees.
Are you receiving any?
No, we don't get,
Okay.
we're not eligible for impact fees under the impact fee structure. Sewer is not.
Would be nice if you were. All right. Wish I
Okay.
knew somebody. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. Good seeing you again, Tim. Quick question, is the sewer full-time employees, are they union or non-union?
They are non-union employees.
Okay. A follow-up question, it might be more for finance. Under the sewer administration, the benefits, I see there's a significant increase. Just looking for a comment on that. What that entails?
I do know that we were told by the finance department that our health insurance is increasing 12.8% this year, and we operate on the town's insurance policies. And the dental insurance is going up 4.7% as well. And if those numbers are correct, I'll let Danielle nod, if she's nodding. But that is where our benefit increases have changed because of the increases for the health and dental insurance.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. I just have a general question about the consulting services. So the two men that retired, they had just been able to do those other things that the new guys filling their spots are not, who were trained to do, don't have the experience to do, and that's why they've been moved to consulting? Is
We
that
moved to
correct?
consulting because we don't have the staff to do it, in-house staff to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Follow up on that. When did those two individuals retire, so you had to engage the professional services? Was it this fiscal year?
One's been gone over a year that I believe. I think it was, Corey's been with us over a year and a half at least. It's been one full budget cycle. Because we had consulting services last year as well. We didn't have consulting services like that in prior years because we didn't use that much consulting service funding.
If you look at 2000, I don't know if you guys can
Yep.
really see that, but 2022 year-end expenses for consulting was $71,670. And we lowered the budget in 2023 to $45,000. So
We
far,
just-
we spent
We
35,000.
budgeted a lot because we didn't know what we were going to need. That's why we put that high number in.
But we spent a lot that first.
Well, I guess my follow-up then is, I understand what you're saying. For those of you that are following along, it's on page 48, that top line. So in 2022, we spent way over budget
Yeah.
for obvious reasons. This year, we had a same amount for our budget, but we are not even getting close to that line as of right now. Our year-to-date, as of the end of October, was 34. So have we encumbered any projects?
We just encumbered a project, the sewer project on Albert Street. We were not going to be able to do that this year, so, because of the weather, and trying to get a bid. So that project is signed. It will be starting in the spring, and we're already starting work on next year's project right away. So that design is starting now, and means some of that will be billed to this year's budget as well.
So let me, if I may follow up. How many more projects are we looking at 2024 than we've done in 2023? That
We
would,
we generally do one major pipe reconstruction project a year. However, this year, we had some problems with some of the buildings. The East Union Pump Station, the roof leaked. The masonry wall is cracked and starting to crumble. So we had the consultant, our consultant from Hoyle Tanner, go in and look things over. We got some structural numbers, we got stuff on that done. That was also billed out as part of a project. They did the design for the Elm Street Pump Station as well. So it's not just the pipe work that we're doing consulting services on, it's on the building repairs. We have another pump station in Riverview Park, which is down across the other side of the river on the Manchester side. It's a fiberglass building that's leaking, and we're getting another project underway to get a replacement building put around that pump station so that can continue to function, and it won't go out of service. There never seems to be a shortage of things to fix.
And we put off a project that we had budgeted for this year.
Which one?
Because, did we put one off because the rates came in really high?
I don't
Was that
know.
last year?
Last year. No, we're on track for several buildings to have repairs, as well as new pipe sewer work to be done in the street.
thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
Thank you, Chair. Page 47, under sewer operations, the regular wages, full-time. I'm not sure if this is for finance too, but there's a significant increase ask for full-time employees. So I want to understand.
We added a second employee this year.
You added an employee?
We added an employee
Okay.
halfway through the year. The man is still on probation.
Okay.
We found that the one employee that we had, let's go back to the two guys that retired. They used to split the on-call status. Each would take a week back and forth for on-call. We had a single employee, and that man was on call 52 weeks a year, 24 hours a day. I don't think that's fair to anybody to be
Yeah.
on call that much.
Yeah.
So we discussed the workload and everything included, and we opted to budget for a second full-time employee, which is what we're doing now, we have now in place. And that employee and then our other employee are splitting the on-call status, as well as the workload. Because we also had a lot of things going on where they had to inspect projects.
Mhm.
They have to still do their normal work. We inspect the sewer repairs in the summertime with our staff. Sometimes the consulting engineer will make a once-a-week visit for a short period. That saves us a lot of money, having our staff do the inspections. So there was a need for a second full-time
Okay.
employee, and that's what we did.
Thank you. I got two more.
Go ahead.
On page 48, and this is more of a clarification, under the CIP projects, I think you mentioned this is, the increases for replacement of clay lines,
Yep.
okay? And then the other question, on the Manchester O&M charges.
Right.
So we're not on a contract, like a multi-year contract with Manchester to lock in
We're
a
on
rate?
we're on a lifetime contract with Manchester. We can't get out of it.
Okay,
Because we have no place to send the wastewater. We can't send it to another town because there's only one line and it only goes to Manchester. We own 4% of their whole project deal down
but
there.
our rates, I mean, like, there's no
It's
negotiations?
based, the rate's okay, but it's based on the flow that we send to them. So if we send them a lot.
I don't know that we've ever had a
lower-
rate change, if you're asking if there's
Yeah.
a rate change. I don't know that we've ever had a rate change. I will find out about that and
Okay.
let you know.
Yeah,
If we have a long-term contract on our rate to bring safe wastewater
Yeah.
there. But I'll let you know.
but this increase is tied to our flow has increased?
No, projects. They
Projects.
have
Projects.
projects that they plan out for every year. And there are some major projects coming up down the
Like-
line that we pay a percentage towards.
So their projects, do you have any visibility into what those projects are?
Those projects, I don't know what they are.
We do, but I don't know off the
I
top
can't
of
tell you
my
what they
head
are,
what
but
they are.
I can't tell you what they are, because I didn't go, they had a big meeting about a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And that's when they outlined their projects for 2024. And one of our commissioners, Dave Pierce, and Lynn and Corey,
Right.
all three went to the meeting. And that's when we found out what our tab is going to be for next year, another $124,000.
You'd like to find out, because we have a 4.11% stake, we should know and have a voice in regards to that, so,
No, we have no voice in it.
no voice.
No voice. It's their
Okay.
wastewater plant. They have to go by federal mandates.
Mm-hmm.
We are a stakeholder. We have no state say in anything they do up there. If we don't agree to pay in, they'll tell us find someplace else to go.
Terminate
There
service.
is no place else to go. So we take their numbers, they're a municipality, we take them in good faith, and we just budget the money and send it in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All set, Brian.
Joe,
For now, thank you.
we're not the only one that's in that system. There are other towns that own parts of the system too. So,
You can, it's Hooksett, Candia, and Bedford.
so, yeah, we're not the only ones that own a stake.
Okay, London did.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification on the pump station upgrade. I know that you said that was a one-time $600,000 expense under 53445 on page 49. Why are you showing a year-to-date negative 71,000 in
We
that
bu-
column?
That is due to an accounting entry that was done with the auditors for an accrual against a carried forward PO.
Boy, that sounds complicated.
Yeah, could you run that by me one more time?
Where I called in, yeah.
Very good. I just went, I mean, again, I know you're an enterprise fund, it's just
So, when the carry forward projects occur, we have PO from a prior year, and then the actual expenses as they occur in the following year are charged against that PO. Due to the GAAP standards, so the generally accepted accounting principles that we have to abide by for the nation, we have to move certain things into the correct reporting year. So it was a manual entry that moved those funds back into the prior year to show it as a 2022 on the financials when we close the year. Because it's a manual entry, there was a flag that defaults to no instead of yes when it looks at the carry forward status. So it gets picked up in this particular report, and we're working with our software company about how we can prevent that type of issue from occurring on the report here.
It's actually $151,755. What I have.
In actual.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, this is why I don't ask that question.
I mean, I nodded.
I just trust me.
I nodded and was
Finance to him.
like, she's got an explanation. Sounds good. I mean, it's clear if it's like, this is an encumbered fund because it was, but this is like a negative, and that was,
And
yeah.
it's unusual.
It sounds like, you know.
And as for, if I may, just on the previous question about the wages and the benefits tied to that new position, so that position, as Tim had indicated, was added in 2023. So now you're seeing the full year cost of that position. The other thing that you're seeing in 23 is sewer used to have one position that they shared partly with the DPW department. And now what they've done is they have 2 full-time employees of their own, which come with their own benefits. And it just so happens with a small department, there's only 3 full-time employees that are budgeted 100% to sewer, and they happen to take some family plans, so the benefits line associated with that has shifted based on whatever elections those employees have.
Thank you for stepping up.
Okay, hoping to wrap this up real soon. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tim and Lynn, for coming out tonight. My question is, on page 46, benefits, 43,110, looking at the difference between budgeted in 2023 to 2024, you said that their health insurance had risen 12.4% and dental was up 4%. But the 75.9 to 106.8 is a 40% increase. Is that because of single plans going to family plans, or, as you had mentioned?
It's
I think
it's
it may
that
be-
full-time
I
employee she
think
just
it may be
mentioned.
because the second full-time employee.
The
but I'll let
second, okay,
Danielle
so
answer.
that added to that number. I gotcha. So it's a different number of people. Gotcha. Or applicants.
Yeah, the part-time position was increased to a full-time position, and now that position has benefits.
We didn't have a part-time, I'd like to correct that. The guy
The half
started,
and half.
the guy started in the middle of the calendar year,
Oh,
so we
right.
only budgeted a half a year for him
Benefits.
for that half a year. And then when the next full-time year came in, we had to budget the full year amount. That's why the numbers are kind of,
So you kind of have three factors there. You have the full-time position for a full year. You have different elections. Some were previously single that are now family plans.
Yeah.
You have the increase in the rate, the 12.10% increase in that rate. So there's a couple different factors that went into that line.
Gotcha. And it wasn't in last budget, but it'll be in this one.
Correct. In the last budget, it would have been at the lower rate, the different employee count.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Jared?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many sewer commissioners are there? Because I see there's a 10% increase in their stipend for their
Three.
proposed.
3 commissioners.
3 commissioners?
And we raised it by
$250.
$50 for one commissioner, $50 another, and what was the number, Lynn? Or was it 75, 75, and 150 or something?
It looks like the new was $250.
Yeah, so we raised it by, so we split it between 3 of us.
Thank you.
We just, the chair gets a little bit more than the other 2 commissioners do, and that's how they structured it. We structured it, and we increased it slightly. I think in past years, sewer commissioner stipend was $750 for each commissioner and $1,000 for the chair. Okay? So it got
Is
increased.
everyone all set? Okay, so at this time, I'm going to go through, so we have 4 pages to review. I think we've already thoroughly reviewed them, but I will give the committee a minute to look at these pages before we move on.
Mr. Chair, just to reinforce, this would be an opportunity where we could make motions to recommend.
This is a moment, yes, we are deliberating currently. You have time today and time on Tuesday, and at our next meetings, until we move the budget. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question again on page 46, the legal services. I know there's no actual, but going back in time, has that ever been utilized?
Yes, we have had used legal in the past. Since I've only been here about 5 years and I've used them a few times.
Okay. Do you have any more visibility? Like, is it the full 5,000, more than 5,000?
We haven't done anything wrong lately, so I guess we don't need a lawyer.
Okay, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know how much we used, I can't remember, but it's one of those where you don't know if you're
Yeah.
gonna need legal services or not.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
You good?
Is everyone okay with this budget? Okay, going to move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good time.
Thank you, guys.
At this rate, we're going to be here very late. That's okay. So I'd like to welcome up Adam, DPW, please. Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you, Adam.
I think I heard a challenge that I'm going to be quick, so I'll,
Thorough.
It's a big budget.
Thorough is
Be
good.
thorough and quick.
brief and thorough. Okay, so I think you've got budget reports, but also a handout, I believe. So just a couple of slides on the handout. I figured I'd go over a little bit of an overview of everything. Right now, DPW, I think Derek presented a slide that shows the breakdown townwide of personnel costs versus non-personnel and CIP. That's about 63% personnel townwide, and about 14% of the budget is capital related. Public Works is a little bit of Public Works is an outlier. Our budget is comprised of 35% personnel, so quite a bit less, and 29% CIP, so quite a bit more. So I have a lot, some days, some years I can look like a hero if commodity rates go down, and some years like this year I can have a pretty tough budget year when commodity rates spike. So kind of keep that in mind as we go forward, both for the actuals for this year, but also for the proposed for next year. Cover page, just have some quick hit items to show the difference from last year's budget to this year's request and the percent changes. Just a couple of notes I'll make for you, everybody can read, but the highway administration line shows only a 2.4% increase. That sounds not too bad. A lot of that is masked by a reorganization that we had last year. The select board allowed me to reduce one full-time equivalent position in the highway division, but we added one in the fleet position. So part of the increase in the fleet side is from gaining that full-time equivalent from the highway and administration line. Also, if you look at the solid waste line, it's got a 12.4% increase, also looks pretty big. Almost half of that increase is just from two lines alone, our changes in our recycling rates and our tipping fees for trash. So there's not a whole lot we can do about that in the short run. In the long run, I've got some ideas with the select board, and I'll bring those, of course, to the budget committee when they come. But for right now, we're sort of beholden to the few places that will take trash and recycling. So the majority of that increase is just from those two lines. And then revenues, I know you guys don't get into revenues too much, but I just know that of my revenues, the bulk of them come from our highway block grant funding, which is from the state, but a lot of that's passed through federal funding. About $415,000 is what we have budgeted. But then we also take in some revenues from sales of cemetery lots, our various permits that we issue through Public Works, such as street opening permits and driveway permits. We do get a little bit of revenue back from guardrail reimbursements. You'll see in my operating budget, we've overexpend guardrail lines yet again. Accidents keep happening. Sometimes the police, nothing against police, sometimes they're there when they show up, and sometimes people have taken off. If we have somebody in an insurance company, we try to get reimbursed for that, so sometimes my line will be overexpended, but we'll get more revenue in to the town general fund as a result, but sometimes we just have to eat that cost. That's a revenue source because, or a cost, I should say, because our insurance coverage for the town does not cover guardrail damage because it's so common. We also take in a little bit of revenue from, not a little bit, about $100,000 a year from our scale. So everybody comes to the transfer station. We do receive some revenue as well from our metal recycling bin. So we separate metals, as you know, at the transfer station. When we haul that off, we get a little money back for that. We have a couple of small grants that we regularly apply for, namely our used oil system program, our household hazardous waste program, and New Hampshire the Beautiful. If we have recycling equipment to purchase, there's a program that we can apply for, and we were able to get 2 grants this past year for recycling equipment. They're about $5,000 each, so a little bit of revenue there, but again, the bulk is from highway block grant funding. The next slide really is the meat of what I've got here to kind of show you where the increase for my department's coming from. So I tried to grab anything that was over a $5,000 change, and unfortunately only one of them is a reduction. The cost of everything, so this is a level, service level budget for me. It's really driven by, largely by commodities. Gas and diesel, of course, is a big one I know as finance has talked about, and recycling and tipping, as I mentioned earlier. We do have 34.5 full-time equivalents. We have 10.5 of those are non-union and 24 union, so the 51,000 is due to the non-union folks. Also, we have increased our part-time wage rate from $18 an hour to $19 an hour for 2024, so for our 10 summer seasonal staff, an extra $1 an hour while they're here makes up a good chunk of that 51,000 as well. We've got some increases. I tried to lump these together. Fleet maintenance, solid waste fleet maintenance. They both have their own lines for all the repair of DPW equipment, solid waste equipment, of course, but also cutting edges and tires were the large budget items for us in the fleet world. So about $40,000 of an increase there, and a lot of that is based on actuals from the previous couple of years, and the increased cost, as you might guess, of steel items like cutting edges and tires have gone up as well. Consulting services line, there's a lot in that line. We'll get to that, of course, but the biggest increase, or the increase there is from some knotweed treatment that we're proposing to do next year. It's been a couple of years since we last treated for knotweed, and it's starting to get out of control again. We do an herbicide spray there. And then I'd like to increase a little bit of the roadside mowing. We're starting to lose ground on that as well. It's costing us a little bit more per hour for the roadside mower contractor with his real big boom mower that he has. But if you don't catch up on that and keep up on that, it turns into trees, and trees turn into big trees that require a contractor. So we're going to try to get to as much roadside mowing as we can because it certainly, for a good chunk of the year, looked like a jungle. As I mentioned, the solid waste tipping fees and the household hazardous waste disposal fees have gone up, and that's sort of a loss leader for us. We try to keep the rates low to encourage people to separate the household hazardous waste. We don't want that to end up in the regular trash because it can contaminate loads. Certainly don't want to end up down storm drains or in backyards. But as costs go up, we do have to cover that. Line striping and stencil work, we bid that out for 3 years. We're in the middle of that, so rates go up a little bit there, and we've unfortunately, as we've been short-staffed, we're trying to contract out some services as we can, and this is one of those that's easy to ask a contractor, while you're here doing X, can you paint a couple parking lots for us or paint some stop bars for us? We do still have the equipment to do it, but unless we're full-staffed, it's really hard to get a two-man team out and about to get all those stencils done. Gravel and stone costs have gone up. Bulky waste, so that's construction and demolition debris through the transfer station. So, 2x4s, sheetrock, anything rigid insulation, that kind of thing. That is going to be another one that down the road, fewer and fewer places are accepting bulky waste and becoming a little bit more particular about what's in it. So there's a rumor that potentially whole refrigerators will no longer be accepted in metal bins because there's a lot of insulation in them. So if they're not accepted in the metal and they're too big to get into our trash compactors and we don't want to damage the compacting equipment, bulky waste might be where they end up. So we may be shifting some of our stream as well to match that. As you'll see when we get to the budget, tree removal costs have gone up, but we've also, it seems like trees never stop dying, go figure. So we're constantly finding trees around town to help keep the roadways safe. Electricity is a town-wide thing that's gone up. Our drainage repair budget, pipe in particular, the cost of pipe per foot, our plastic drainage pipe that we use, has gone up significantly this past year. We had a very lucky occurrence where right before the pricing really spiked, we got a little tip from our vendor and said, hey, if you place an order this week, you'll save because prices go up about 100%. Next week. So we were able to offset a lot of that cost this year by jumping on that and making a big order, but that's going to hit us next year as well. And then the good news for last, the state contract, which is what we purchased our salt under through Granite State Minerals, has actually gone down a little bit from last year. So we have a little bit of savings there in the salt budget. One other big item I note, and then I'll get to capital stuff, is that this year I did also consolidate the uniform and clothing lines from all the divisions into the highway and administration line, mainly selfishly because it's a lot easier for us on the billing end to tabulate from the company. They refuse to give us 4 different divisions. They just lump them all together, so our secretary and I go through, and it just every weekly bill takes, X number of minutes to chew through, and it just makes sense to keep them all together, and then we can just code them all to one line. Okay, then on to CIP. Tried to keep my vehicles and equipment line pretty consistent year to year if you follow along with the CIP process. So we're actually down a little bit from 2023 with the proposed budget. We're proposing to replace a 1992 sidewalk machine, which actually was auctioned off. The select board has got us on a long-term demo for the equipment that we hope to buy in 2024. We have a 2009 and a 1999 equipment trailer that are both up for replacement. We have 2 2006 message trailers, the electronic signboards that you see, for big events that can get pulled out to 114 or 13. And a 2016 curbside truck. If it feels like we just replaced a curbside truck, that's because we did 2 years ago. We had one on 2022. Right now we have 3 curbside trucks, and we are still awaiting the truck that we ordered right after the budget was passed in 2022. So it's almost a 2-year delivery cycle. We hope to get it soon, maybe even by the end of December, but likely January. So if a truck is budgeted for 2024, we probably won't see it in service until almost 2026. So keeping these trucks, they're pretty complicated and do break down a lot. That's about as long as we can stretch it as a 10-year cycle. And then the other big chunk of my capital budget, the biggest, is a road plan and projects. This year, we don't have much for projects. We have the final year of our multi-year traffic signal intersection project we've tried to modernize. We've got camera sensing now at all the intersections rather than the loop sensors. So it's not a traffic cam where people are monitoring or anything, but it uses, the computer uses a visual motion detection to know that a car is there waiting for a signal. They're a lot more robust, so you don't have, as the pavement heaves and shifts, they don't go down like a traffic loop that's in the asphalt will.
Does that mean I won't have, excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, does that mean I won't have to run red lights with my motorcycle now?
Hopefully, they're supposed to be sensitive enough and dialed in. If you find that you are, give us a call, because
Okay.
there's software we can log in and try to increase the sensitivity of certain areas, so.
Thank you. I've had problems.
And the police are here, so you probably don't want
Allegedly
He's on record.
to.
Well,
But the majority of the projects and road plan budget is the road plan itself, so that's a $1.6 million. Our goal is usually about between 8 and 10% of the road network. I will tell you that being short-staffed this year, in particular, has caught up to us with the rising costs of everything, but also the pressure now as we've had a couple of years in a row where we've been down multiple staff members. I was faced with a decision to defer a couple of roads that have already been deferred 2 years in a row, and we contracted out a couple of those to get those done, but as soon as we do that, it kind of blows our budget as we've planned for in-house construction, and when we are the general contractor usually. So probably in 2024, our road plan budget's not going to go quite as far. We're going to do a little bit less reclamation, a little more long-term preservations of some of the main roads, overlays, which can, get another lease on life, another 10 years of useful wearing surface with an overlay. We'll try to shift a little bit more to the maintenance end of things, and hopefully we can stretch that budget. Once we are consistently full staff, which is certainly a goal of any new, as you probably know, my Teamsters union has a contract that will be up on the ballot in March. We hope that would help, if it passes, help pull in new hires and certainly be a little more competitive in the market. Any social media fans might see me get laughed out of the room sometimes when I post for positions, but we have to do it. We're short, but it certainly would help. So our hope is once we kind of get a year or two consistently at full staff, we'll know if we need to adjust that road plan budget. For right now, I don't want to make any increases, certainly not in a tough budget year. So just kind of a couple of big ticket items for next year that we have planned would be some of the stuff that was dropped off the 2023 list. Laurel, Ivy, and Wall in Pinardville. Lindsay, Serenitas, and Sunbeam are up in the northeast section of town. We've got some sidewalks in Pinardville and an overlay, hopefully a mass road, that were deferred. And then Mountain Road itself is supposed to get an overlay, or was supposed to get an overlay. And we have some new projects that haven't been deferred yet. West Union Street, and there's some sidewalk associated with that. We'd like to extend the sidewalk on West Union, at least to Lions Field, but hopefully right to Pleasant Street. Some of that will be offset with some impact fees that we'll be receiving from the Bog Road condo development. The board has chosen to use some of those funds for that. We've also got a little stretch of Elm Street that wasn't done from Main to the pump station, and some sidewalk there. And then Worthley Hill and Tipping Rock Road are in pretty rough shape, and they definitely need some drainage repairs. So hope to get to that as well. And then kind of one last note, we did defer a couple pieces of equipment in order to try to make all the things work this year and pay all the bills. So I'm going to have to reinsert those back into CIP for probably 2025 and shift things to the right, a roll-off trailer and a solid waste tractor. Okay, and then the last slide I have, and then I'll sit back for slings and arrows. I've done this a couple years in a row, and it kind of helps bring home exactly what you're getting for your tax dollar, what folks at home are getting for their tax dollar from DPW. I try to use some updated numbers, but we've got an approximate median assessed value of about $412,000 now. We've had a nice increase in the last couple of years. And an annual tax bill of about $7,700 on that. Of that, $2,500 goes to the town, and the rest goes to the school. Of the town's portion, you're getting, DPW is getting slightly less than $800. And then I just kind of show the breakdown of where that goes once it gets to DPW. Without, belaboring the point, for about $15 a week, you're getting, coverage from DPW, and that's everything from plowing, trash pickup, weekly street lights, road maintenance, grounds maintenance, the common, setting up for events on Main Street, et cetera, clean rivers and lakes. We take care of the water quality around town. Emergency response from us, but also vehicle availability for response from PD and fire. So for $60 a month, that's exactly what I pay in another community for my trash pickup. So I think it's a pretty good value, I think. I'd like to be able to continue to do that. So I will now let you guys have the floor.
Thank you, Adam. Are there questions for Adam? Lauren?
Thank you. I have two, if I may,
Go right
Mr.
ahead.
Chair.
Yep.
Thank you. You mentioned a few times about being short-staffed. How many positions are you down right now?
Right now, we have 3 full-time vacancies. It's a little bit mitigated because we've got one recent retiree who's volunteered to stay on in a part-time status as long as I have vacancies. So that's not a permanent solution, of course, but as long as he can and as long as we have vacancies, I'll keep that. So we're really down about 2.5.
And that's really to follow up. Thank you. That's wage related, 100% is you said you're getting laughed out of the room. They're like, what are you hiring for?
Occasionally,
So,
yeah. It's so it's tough to find commercial driver's license operators. We do offer to train people, so we've had to actually hire above our normal laborer rate. It was, I think, 16. Pete, help me out if you can remember. It was about 1680, I think, is what our laborers jobs are being posted at, and that's obviously not too competitive with, Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's. So we've been hiring at the truck driver rate, but then we require them to get their CDL right out of the gate as fast as possible to be both useful for us to be able to drive the big equipment that we have, but also we don't want to upset the people that have been here for a couple of years and they have a CDL and now they're finding somebody who makes about the same amount of money off the street without one. So it's a little bit of a dance there, but we certainly hope, if we can advertise a little bit higher rate to get folks off the street, we'll do that.
I'll defer my second question for now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Brian?
Oh, thank you, Chair. On page 25, under heavy equipment rental,
Yes.
there's an ask for 1,000. What are we potentially planning to rent?
So in our cemetery division, we do the burials ourselves. Normally, what we are able to do is either borrow an excavator from the highway if the timing works out right. A lot of burials are on the weekends, but sometimes those have to be prepped on a Friday for a weekend burial. Occasionally, the solid waste backhoe is another option for us that could be brought to the cemetery, but if it's not in use at solid waste, which is an even smaller window of time. So we've had a couple of times. We haven't been coding against that line because we didn't have a budget to it, but we've had to rent a mini excavator a few times just to, in some cases, because the area between graves is so tight, you can't really get a full-size piece of equipment anyway. But just because we don't have anything available to do that, and it's a little time-sensitive sometimes with a burial. So that would be for the cemetery division only, as they have a burial need.
I have a follow-up comment to that. So I remember on East Union, I think he rented something from East Point, like a mini excavator. So
Yes.
where did that come out of?
So for the East Union project, that comes out of the highway reclamation fund. So if it's a road project, and it's nice that you mentioned that, sometimes we're already renting a mini excavator for a road project, and if the fuller staff we are, the more often we need a third piece of equipment. We have 2 large excavators, and then if we have a good amount of people in, we can rent a mini to make 3 excavation crews.
Right.
So if we're already renting one, we can try to peel that off and assist for, we try not to rent a bunch of equipment if we don't have to. Sometimes it works, and sometimes we don't have one, available.
Okay, thank you.
Jared?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Sticking with cemeteries, just talking about part-time wages, I know that you said that there's going to be an increase. Looking at the past couple of years, you've only used 50% of this budget, but we're looking to increase it.
Yeah.
Can you articulate why we're increasing it when we've only used 50% of it historically?
I can. So if I can flop ahead for a second, if you take a look at page 26, part-time wages for highway, you see we're way over this year. Some of that is that part-time retiree that stayed on with us. But a good chunk of that is my method of when we hire. So take a step back. I mentioned earlier we have 10 seasonals that we hire in the summer. 8 of them are laborers. Nominally 4 help cemetery maintenance and 4 help the highway maintenance and the things, and then we have 2 engineering interns. When we get hired, we don't really say, you are going to be cemetery forevermore and you're going to be highway. But when I assign them in our time card system, I do that. Sometimes when we put them in, we don't know who is going to depart early. We almost never have, everyone starts, right as school gets out and everybody goes back the weekend before school starts. We always have stragglers that come in late. We always have folks that leave early. Probably need to do a better job throughout the year of recoding in our end of things on the time card. Okay, if 3 of my 4 cemetery people are now gone or actually working with highway, I probably ought not code them such. So I think that's more of a coding issue. I've overspent highway and underspent cemetery, but we try to keep them as long as we can, but a lot of them play sports and stuff, so they'll go back earlier too. So we have to budget for, we don't have to budget, but what we do is we budget for, as if we had all 8 of those laborers for the entire summer period, but it almost never works out that way.
Follow up. So is it safe to say that in order to follow the actual allocation of your part-time employees, most of them are at the highway and therefore this line should be reduced and that line should be increased to match what's really going on versus, I'm going to use the term, falsifying time cards for putting them under a budget that they shouldn't be charging to?
I mean, I don't know if I'd put it that way, if we're talking about falsification of records. So, it's kind of like if I say Jared is a budget committee member, he's also on the school board, I believe, right? But if I call you a school board member and tonight you're on the budget committee, you're still a school board member. It's kind of like that.
But I'm getting
When
paid
somebody
from the
gets-
school board side, not from the budget committee side.
Right. But when somebody gets hired, we don't know at date of hire, hey, I'm going to have to take off, and first of all, I'm going to take off in the middle of summer to go on a week-long trip with my family, or I'm going to take off in, July instead of September. We do the best we can. We assign them as such, but what I don't do is midstream, okay, where have, these people ended up and where, we're, if anything, we're billing highway when we should be billing cemetery, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Because this is under.
Thank you. And just to be clear, I wasn't saying that somebody was doing anything illegally. I just know working for the government.
Falsifying documents, I just gotta be careful. I don't want
No,
that out
I hear
there.
you, but it's some companies and the government sometimes calls that time card theft because you're not putting it to the correct line. And working for the U.S. federal government, I know that very clearly on what we have to do. So I'm not saying that we're doing that here.
Certainly what we call a pulse raiser, though. Laura?
Thank you. I flagged recycling,
Yes.
and I'm curious about the contract and the plans, and I'm guessing you have thoughts.
So, let's see, page 31, I believe. Okay, so 31. So up to date, as of today, we are just over 118,000. So we're right at budget, but obviously I still have a few weeks left. So we're going to be over by the end of the year for recycling and removal. And this is 45930. What we have on the both tipping and recycling, we went out to bid several years ago for multi-year rates. We have those locked in, but they weren't Samburnized, so they weren't taken to public meetings. So if you look at my default lines, they do not track with the proposed. You play that game. It's either you benefit by not having to take it to the town meeting, but you don't get to also increase the default line. So it does put us in a little bit of a pinch on years when it goes up. So right now, there's on the tipping end of things, we had a, probably going to get this wrong, I think it's a 10 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, where we can extend years. We're coming out of that and into our 1-year renewals. There's a baseline of at least a 2% increase I budgeted for a 3% because that's a little closer to what, it's based on the BLS data for the Boston region for refuse. So I've estimated a 3% increase there. The recycling removal, we had originally a 7-year contract, and I think right now it's a 3 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So we're coming into that same thing. We're coming into the 1-year renewal. So one of the decisions the board will have to make as we talk about renewals in May is if we want to go back out to bid, see what else is out there. From a tipping perspective, there's only really two games in town. The North Country landfill, where we take our trash now to Bethlehem, and then that's operated by Casella. And then there's a turnkey landfill in Rochester. So that's really it. They're both open to accept from anywhere, so they're filling pretty rapidly. For recycling, there's a couple of options in Massachusetts, and nothing in New Hampshire on the scale that we're generating. So we've really got those same two players on the recycling end that we have on the trash end. There are some waste-to-energy plants, but we'll check again, I'm sure, this year as we're expanding or looking at our options, but they have historically been at capacity for a while now because there's so few of them left and so few other places to take trash. We are approaching what will be semi-crisis at some point with as a country, but also as Goffstown, where to take all this stuff. I don't have any great answers. I know, I think I mentioned this maybe at our walk around of the site, but when Boston renewed, I think they now truck all their material to Pennsylvania. There's some pretty significant costs associated with that, of course. It's a doom and gloom, but I don't really have a great answer.
No, that's
We're
okay.
But the plan right now is to continue with
follow
our current vendor if we can't find anything better, but.
So, what I guess I've been hearing about recycling, so even if you go out to bid, things are still pretty rough.
Yes.
Right? Has it been considered, and I like recycling, so don't come at me for that, have other avenues, have you considered?
It's a question that comes up every year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Peter
We
answer
talk
that.
about that at the select board meetings.
Okay.
Whether it's profitable or costly to recycle.
Okay.
And in some cases, we've discovered that it would probably be cheaper if we didn't recycle. But environmentally, we're trying to still be environmentally
Well, and we've taken
compliant.
a lot of strides in educating the town, so if we go
Well,
back,
that doesn't
then
make
it's
it,
like a whole new
you can do all the
project.
education you want, it still doesn't make a difference. Recycling costs more.
Right.
To handle and transport and to bring it to a facility that isn't trash, so we're not making anything like we used to.
Right. Last year, we had a month or two where we were actually back into a revenue on sort of post-COVID type thing. This year, I took a quick look back through the rates. We started the year at about $95 a ton for recycling, which actually is more than the tipping fee. We're about $65 a ton for tipping. We've ended the year, or we're currently at about $65 for recycling as well. So on paper anyway, once we get to the scale, they're about neck and neck. It does cost us more to bring trash north to Bethlehem because you're fully loading. That's quite a haul up there. So it does take recycling to get into the $78, $80 range before it now really costs us more all in than trash. But maybe to Joe's comment on the education piece, if we keep hovering around this amount and we pull back from recycling and then it dives down to a revenue again, now it's a lot of work to get that education piece back where you have to convince people to recycle again, and it'll take a while. Oh no, I heard recycling is more expensive, I'm not gonna bother, and that makes a big difference.
Right.
One thing that we've talked about a little bit, we did a pilot. I haven't got anything in the budget this year. I don't want to take us too far off track, but composting. So New Hampshire is not a mandatory composting state yet. Some other of our surrounding states are. There are a few ways to handle compost, none of them very fun, but that's an option. There's estimates that it could be 25-30% of the waste stream is compostable. So that may be something to kind of both for budgetary reasons and for lack of anywhere to bring it, we might have to look into coming up.
Can I do one last
Yep.
clarification? So it's for for waste, did you say there were a few more years in the contract before you revisit, and 3 years for recycling as well?
So both contracts are into our one-year renewals now, so if
Oh, you
if
are.
the select
So it-
board
it
wants
will be
to
year to
kind of
year.
go a different direction, that's up for discussion each year
Okay.
now, going forward.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
set, Lori?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Sam?
Thank you. The 3 full-time vacancies that you have, that also affects plowing, correct?
It does.
How concerned are you with the winter coming?
Knowing that whatever I say is going to come back probably around
I mean, the
on me
woolly
here.
bear caterpillars
I'm
were
not
very
worried at
dark,
all,
so
yeah.
there's going to be a big winter.
Karma is a funny thing, right? It's a stressor. We right now are pulling from our fleet mechanics. They 2 of them cover plow routes to make sure that we have a consistent level. Some of our plow routes are 10, 12 miles long. Some are slightly shorter, but they take longer because it's a little neighborhood here and a little neighborhood there. A lot of our drivers have been here long enough that they have a route and they're pretty efficient with the way to get around, but we have a lot of new drivers and that takes them a bit too. So it's definitely a concern. Doesn't leave us much margin for error if somebody falls ill or if a piece of equipment goes down. We don't have enough drivers to fill the seats. So all the small vehicles that we have are already accounted for. So we kind of feel the pinch when we don't have enough CDL drivers in particular because the equipment is the limiting factor.
Wait, so, I'm sorry, so the equipment exists, we just don't have people to drive it?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We pull in when we can, and I try not to pull this lever too often for everybody's benefit, but when we have to, we'll shut down the transfer station, and that frees up a couple of employees. The diminishing returns, though, because if we stop the transfer station, that all comes back around eventually anyway. But with our curbside drivers, if we pull them off the regular routes and then they plow all night long, is it really wise for us to put them back in the curbside truck the next morning to start the route again? So sometimes our department will kind of do a wash into the plowing realm for a while, and then maybe on post-storm cleanup time, we'll send as many as we can, if the third truck is available, into curbside and try to get as much of the curbside done by helping solid waste division from highway. So there is some of that, but there's not a whole lot of slack, I guess. So routes are longer than they have been, but as of right now, with the first event we had last Tuesday, went pretty well, especially for a first storm for a couple of new folks. So I don't know, probably doesn't answer your question. I'm not chicken little just yet. We have a few other things that we can do to keep trucks on the road, but if we lost a couple more operators, for sure, it would be tricky. We're not as bad as like Ware, I think, was on the news last week. They're down 50% of their staff. That would be a crushing.
Okay. Doug?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question back to recycling just for a minute here. Even if you had a negative revenue, slightly negative revenue stream on recycling, if you switch that over to the regular waste tipping, would that be a significant cost increase to, that would outweigh if you got rid of recycling? So it actually would cost you a lot more at the end of the day. So recycling still, does that make sense?
It's about $10, $12 a ton is what it would cost. That's how much higher recycling has to go above trash before the cost of our haul offsets to make it not
So right now,
worthwhile.
it's not really,
So we're kind of hovering in there. We go above a couple months in a row. We'll go below. It hasn't been consistently high long enough yet where I've recommended or the board has felt that it's time to pull the ripcord.
yeah, thank you.
The other piece that I didn't mention, maybe it helps too, is the folks at the landfill, they get their volume business, right? They have a limited amount of volume they can fill. trash weighs more per ton than recycling does. So if you bring a ton of recycling, it takes up more volume than a ton of trash. So they've told us they won't even give us the same rate at the scale because it's going to take up more of their landfill space. So there's a little bit of an adjustment there, I think 20% or something like that. But so that's another thing that works against sending the recycling to the landfill.
Okay. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. As a follow-up to that, with our percent changes of solid waste and recycling, is that a combination of the rate decreases, also maybe increase in tonnage or increase in trips to the landfills?
Mainly rate-based.
Rate-based.
Just based on the, so I budgeted $75 a ton.
Yes.
It's closer to where we are this month or last, whatever it was when I created the budget, 2 months ago now. Not quite all the way to that 95 that we were seeing for the first half of the year. I try to be a little optimistic. I don't like to build in a bunch of slop if I can help it. But I also don't want to come to June or August and realize we're totally, blown with the budget. So I budgeted $75 a ton. So we can go up a little bit from where we are now, but not much. But that increase is solely based on that. Tonnage has been fairly consistent over the years. Sadly, we would like to see recycling go up a little bit more, but we've been kind of maxed out. Educational campaigns can briefly bring it up, but we haven't seen any real long-term changes once we've gotten to the point where we are.
Have you seen an increase in the solid waste aspect? Or?
Solid waste, not too much. Bulky waste.
Okay.
Last week or so aside, and maybe some of that's just the change in the weather, of course. With all the money in the economy, a lot of demolitions, a lot of house construction. So we end up seeing a lot of new furniture, new appliances,
Sure.
That kind of thing. So we did see an uptick in bulky waste over the last 2 years. Just recently, it started to slow down a little bit, but that could be seasonal.
Joe, go ahead.
Okay. Laura?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consulting services. You had talked about it being an increase of 22,000 for roadside mowing and the knotweed. Is that?
Yes.
And I'm looking at, I think it's line
Page 20.
4503 on page 27.
Yes. Okay. 45030.
Yep.
Okay.
So you're asking for a 22,000 increase based on you need to consult, you need to do more mowing, keep the little trees from becoming big trees, and you said knotweed, which I actually thought was the conservation committee, so I guess that's my second part of the question. But your 2022 budget and actuals, you were 27,000 under your budget then, and then you're still asking for another 22,000 this year?
Yes. So we've got a couple things going on there. Let me just get to my little notes page here. So the first thing, let me give you the actual current. So that line, as of today, the year-to-date for 2023 is 83,000.
So not 37,000 the year-to-date?
Right. And the reason that's jumped so much recently is we contract, one of the things in this line is, as Tim mentioned earlier, catch basin cleaning. We've now fully phased it out, I guess, as we've auctioned it off. But the VACON, we had been phasing that out, so we had started contracting a couple years ago. So I think it's around 30,000 or so of that line is there. This year, Bellamore really didn't do much at all for us until September, starting in September. So this has been a loaded budget for that. So we've got 83,000 actuals and 11,000 still encumbered in the PO. So the other things in that consulting line are the big items anyway, street sweeping and some of our engineering. So if we have a one-off drainage project that we can't engineer in-house, we'll hire Hoyle Tanner or Quantum Consultants. to
The
help us
addition of
out.
the VCON in your year-to-date change explains it. I just was wondering what was driving the difference in the budget and actuals to the additional 22,000, but throwing those things in, that makes sense, so, thank you.
And the other, it does, I did say roadside mowing, but the other thing, we do have the contractor mow. We do some ourselves, but the drainage ponds around town that new developments usually are requiring them for no off-site stormwater impacts, but somebody's got to maintain them. As now, the planning board's desire has been to put push the maintenance of those, even for new developments to the town. So every time a new development comes in, we're adding to our work list. And if you don't keep those mowed, same thing as roads, they turn into trees before long, and now there's no pond left, and it's just a bunch of trees. So, so we're trying to get keep up with those as well.
Thank you.
And then Knotweed, I know you mentioned the Conservation Commission. I did, for the first time this year, actually talked to the board a few months ago and went to the Conservation Commission last month just to bring them into the fold, because previously they hadn't been. It was sort of a DPW budget item because they're roadside knotweed infestations. But much like the milfoil in the lakes, the Conservation Commission kind of gets involved with that. I wondered if they might have some feelings about, the program as a whole. It's, I just don't want to be the only one out here making decisions to spray chemicals on the sides of the road or whatever, So I did come to them. They do support the program because the downside of knotweed is much worse than a targeted treatment by a licensed applicator. So we're going to continue that, but as of right now, anyway, the budget still remains in DPW. So we'll manage the program, but at least they've been into the decision-making process.
Okay. Stacy?
Actually, I think Allison had her hand up first.
That's okay.
Okay,
Go Stacy,
sorry,
then I'll go
Allison.
That's
No
fine.
worries.
This is more for educational purposes. Who decides the rates for when people drop stuff off and what that costs? And when was the last time that was raised?
So the select board sets as part of their annual fee setting. By statute, if they don't set a rate for something, we can't charge a rate for something. So the select board does annually adjust. Each department can offer up any suggestions that we have. We try to, for pretty much everything except household hazardous waste, I try to recover as best we can anyway. The cost that it takes us, what it costs us to dispose of an item, we try to recover that in the revenue stream. Of course, a large percentage of what we end up taking in is residential trash and recycling, which we don't charge for. So it's really, the commercial end of things, appliances, large furniture, the bulky waste, anything that goes across the scale, tires. So tires and mattresses is a good example. We try to, the cost to dispose of those has gone up. We've tried to match our fees with what it actually costs us for those items. Household hazardous waste, it would be pretty darn expensive for folks if we matched dollar for dollar what it costs us as a town to get rid of. But again, it's just such a bad thing to do. If people are just going to get rid of it in other ways, we'd rather avoid that.
And when was the last time it was raised?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Annually.
It is
Derek, can you help me out? I don't remember when the last fee was. It July?
Probably
maybe?
June or so.
Okay. So
We
we'll be coming
put,
up on that
we
again.
put out to the department heads asking them for input on fee schedules.
Okay,
And then they send it to us and we review it and come up with a number, working with them.
thank you.
Allison?
I'm looking at page 30, the very top line. What kind of drove your 2023 year-to-date more than twice as much of your budget?
Okay, so facility maintenance in fleet. So the biggest chunk of that is we had a couple years ago, we had a 2022, we had a special article for ventilation and fire suppression improvements in the highway garage. The way that funding worked was because it was a special article, it lapsed at the end of 2023 if we didn't encumber it. So we encumbered, we finally found a contractor, which was very tough in '22. Finally found a contractor at the end of the year to encumber the funds for the project. But there were other things that contractor wasn't able to do and didn't really satisfy the financing principles anyway. So we ended up having to hit the maintenance line of the garage to make some electrical improvements.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, you were talking about it, I just wasn't sure where that was falling.
So
Okay.
that's where that line got hit.
Okay.
We've also, across the board though, we've been in the facility now almost 30 years, so we're definitely seeing our maintenance costs increase. We probably could just about sustain a part-time, if not full-time electrician, just with the DPW. And a lot of, in the solid waste realm, I know you asked about fleet, but in the solid waste building lines were also high there. A lot of even just the steel paneling of the recycling building because of the nature of how we handle recycling to get it into a Bobcat and load it. Those walls take a pretty good beating. So We've been trying to keep up with the building maintenance as well, but yeah, that's the majority of that.
Okay,
Fleet
thanks.
line.
Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I want to go back to page 26, on the clothing and uniforms. I think, I believe you mentioned that this is higher because you consolidated all divisions.
Yes.
So I averaged it out, it's $1,200 per employee. So what do they get for uniforms and clothing, $1,200?
So we've got, by contract, our union folks have a boot allowance, safety toe shoe allowance every year. That's a reimbursement, so they'll buy it, we reimburse them for the cost. We try to match that with our non-union folks that are, out in the field and doing it. As an employer, we're required to provide safety apparel. We're not required to provide clothing, but by contract, they do have a uniform service. So they get 11 sets, enough to basically get through 2 work weeks, pants, shirts, and we provide separately foul weather gear and rain gear, high-vis vests, that sort of thing, hard hats, goggles would come out of this line.
Gloves.
That's the majority of it.
I have a few follow-ups on, other questions actually, clarifications. On the next page, 27, I see an increase in travel expenses. What's that pertaining to?
Yes, so that one is I won't say it's a one-time expense, but a new expense last year. That was for me. I made travel to the National Public Works Association conference. As part of my review process with the select board, they encouraged me to get a little bit more involved with some professional associations. So I had requested and they had approved travel for that. So don't know if that's going to be an annual thing, but we did increase the travel budget a little bit, not the full amount.
And what was it, a conference?
Yes, yeah, the American Public Works Association.
Okay. And a few more clarification on the same page. The guardrail repair, that increases because of due to more accidents, and we're not getting reimbursed?
So revenues will come in on the revenue end of things. So even if we do get reimbursed, this line never goes down. It just goes up and up. The revenues, maybe, if we can recover some, will go up too. But the cost of steel has gone up quite a bit, so even if I have the same number of accidents or less, some of the pieces are more expensive than they were. So when a contractor comes in, it's pretty hefty bill each time. And if you want to join my world, if you see an accident that's hit the end unit of a guardrail, that's the worst kind, because that's the real expensive part. So if you want to hit one, hit it after the beginning.
I'm trying to aim.
Right.
And just one more follow-up, and I think I know the answer, but I want to confirm. Still on 27, just a little up on line striping. Is that increased because of the commodity of the paint went up?
Some of that is, we did have a 3-year bid where each subsequent year of the bid, we do have a slight increase in the cost of paint and glass beads from the contractor there. But we also did, this year, because of the staffing, we did have more stencil work accomplished than we really had planned for or had done in previous years, just because otherwise it wasn't going to get done. So the crosswalks, the areas in Main Street and East Union now where we have bike sharrows, stop bars, every stop sign, we try to have a stop bar, that kind of thing.
Okay, and then the last question I had on page 28, similarly, the gravel and stone, that increased too, you're asking is because of the commodity rates?
Some of, yes, cost has gone up, and this year what we had with a couple of the contracted construction projects was we were paying for the gravel. So some of them have different processes than us and use a little bit more gravel in a trench or have a different piece of equipment to excavate a trench. And when you backfill that same amount of pipe, if it's a wider trench, you have more stone to fill. So some of that was absorbed in there. We also, depending on where the gravel's going. If it's as part of a larger reclaim project, the reclamation line, the capital line will be the source for some of our gravel. So, as well as our gravel crushing operation, we pay the contractor every couple of years to come in and crush. So that would be on the reclaim end of things. Gravel and stone here would be more for the smaller one-off projects. If a homeowner has a drainage issue, we'll try to repair it, or add a drainage structure right there. So any of that smaller stuff usually hits this line, and then the larger projects hit the reclamation line.
Okay, thank you.
Joe.
All set, Brian?
I think so.
Okay.
Joe,
Jared?
asked and answered.
Peter? All right, we're going to try to get into deliberations. Is everybody all set?
I just wanted to bring up one thing,
Go
I
ahead,
don't know,
Gary.
Adam was up here. Last year, we supported the burner as outside the box. Adam, could you update us on that?
Sure.
He did a little bit when we were doing the tours, but
So it's in. We've had mostly positive success so far. So we've got the air curtain brush burner. Just a quick overview of it. It's basically a large storage container looking thing with an open top. It's got a pretty crazy sized fan that when you load it with brush and start it off, you turn on the fan, and the fan does two things. It provides oxygen for the fire to burn nice and hot and fast, burn down that brush quick without a lot of smoke, but it also creates a curtain of air. It's all pushed in from one side of the top of the box, so it pushes a curtain of air over the surface of the box, and that helps keep the smoke down. It kind of creates a little circulation effect. When it's burning at or close to capacity and hot, it's almost invisible. You can be right next to it and feel a little bit of the heat, but you look over and all you see is kind of like a gas grill. You see the little trace lines of the heat rising. That's it. So when it's working at capacity, it's great. We're still trying to get into a good mode with really wet wood, and how maybe we should be changing our brush drop off from a last in, first out scenario to maybe a double-ended brush bay. So you might see some changes at the transfer station, so the wood will become a little bit seasoned before it gets into the burner. And also weather. We have a couple of close neighbors. We're trying to be a little bit better neighbors now that the burning operation is up closer to where we want it to be closer to the buildings, because that's where we have people bring brush, and that's where we had electricity to power the fan units, which is the most efficient way to have these fired. But the downside is we're up closer now to residential houses, so we're trying to be a little more mindful of which way the wind's blowing and is it raining or not, and some of that can help keep the off-site smoke down. So, so far so well. It's definitely a success, and we're certainly not paying the thousands of dollars we were to crush it or grind it rather. So far so good.
But just a point that I want to make, we saved all that money when we kind of thought outside the box when we brought something like that in, so.
And
We need to keep doing that, thinking outside the box on this stuff.
okay, so we're going to dive right in. So page 25 to the top of page 26 is cemetery operations. Are there any questions solely on this area of the budget? Okay, if I'm going too fast, please let me know. We're going into Public Works Highway, so 26 and 27. Anything on those two pages? Okay, we're going to move on to page 28, the rest of Public Works Highway.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sam.
Thanks. So the very last line on page 28 for sidewalk maintenance, I noticed that, I know you mentioned something about extending a sidewalk, but like, it just feels like we're not getting close to that 90,000.
So, a little story behind that one. So the 22 actuals are pretty low. What doesn't show up on here, Danielle sort of touched on earlier with the encumbrances and how they show up for previous years, because there's only so many columns that we can keep it all clean. It doesn't show that we rolled $79,000 in encumbrance from 22 to 23. So our 23 budget included some of that sidewalk from the previous year. Right now, our actual as of today, year-to-date, is $113,000, and we've got about $50,000 in outstanding billing from Continental.
How much?
50.
Okay.
Largely from the East Union mixed use, because it's extra long and there was nothing there to begin with. That's from scratch, all the granite and all that. So we anticipate the billing. So between that, we'll be. It's going to look like we're well over the 23 budget, but with that encumbrance, it will be under the total new adjusted budget of 22.
And this is just like patching sidewalk and making sidewalk, it's not plowing sidewalk?
Not plowing sidewalk, but if we, once in a while, if we had a piece of sidewalk equipment that might go down, we may purchase a new implement from this line.
Okay, but we're buying a new sidewalk thing, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm saying in
So it's
the
like-
past, kind of
yeah,
what else has
okay.
come out of this. No, majority of it is either constructing brand new or reconstructing, or, like you said, patching
Okay.
sidewalks. So.
Cool. Thanks.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one before, resurfacing. I see the actuals of 22 to 23, significant increase. Can you comment more about that?
We did also have a large encumbrance. I should have tried to note that, but I did not. I think the encumbrance brought it to zero remaining on that, to the $500,000 for 2022. The actual 23 budget adjusted with the encumbrance is over 500. So right now, we've got some outstanding CPI billing, but really, if you gave me $1 million more in paving, I could spend it. My goal is to spend what the town gives me. So we really, the actuals have been with the encumbrance right to the max.
Okay.
For that.
Thank you.
All set, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on page 28? All right, let's move on to the fleet. So that's page 29 and top of page 30, that section. We all set here? Okay. Let's go to solid waste. That's page 30. Starts page 30. Oh, Sam, go ahead.
Thanks. So on 30, under employee development, I noticed for 2023, we're at 500, but like we've spent 1,550. I know it's really small, but we're upping it for 1,700. What are we developing?
So, one, related to the air current burner, we have a couple options. When you operate one of these air current burners, it's classified, right now, they may be changing this, but right now it's classified as an incinerator, even though I think I told you this before when I was trying to buy this thing, if we make a big pile of wood on the ground and set it on fire, you need 0 permits. If you put it into a box that makes the smoke less, you have to go get an incinerator permit from the federal government. So DES manages that program for us. But as part of that, when you have an incinerator, you either need to contract out or in-house have a Method 9, it's called, but it's visual opacity, so you have to have somebody trained or hire somebody who can come in and double check you every so often that when you're rolling at full capacity, you're not putting a lot of black smoke into the air, in this case from an incinerator. So we've chosen to go the in-house route because it's a little cheaper, but that is, right now, we've had 2 of us getting certified. I think we're probably going to scale that back to only 1 in the future, but for right now, we have 2 certified smoke school candidates that we have to go twice a year for this. So we wanted to kind of get it up and running, make sure we don't just have one set of eyes on the new program, but I think after this year, we're probably just going to scale it back, and 1 person will go twice a year for that. So we'll still have a little bit of money in that line, but you should see it go down a little for 25.
You guys have to go twice a year,
Twice a year.
just to make sure there's no black smoke.
It's kind of a funny thing, but your eyes play tricks on you, so you have to be able to tell the difference between 10% opacity and 20%. And then there's a process, to every so often take a reading. So, but it's quite a bit more cost effective than hiring a professional company, for a visit. So,
okay.
Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 31, I have a few questions, and you might have mentioned this already. The first one, consulting services.
Yes.
What is that pertaining to?
Okay, so I can give you some of those items. I will say, as of today, that one's up to $8,850. That line is used for a few things. Our air permit for the burner is part of that now. Our alarm system for the transfer station, we have a separate line in the fleet and the highway that takes care of the alarm systems for those buildings, but this transfer station alarm system is down there, as well as any repairs to the alarm. Our scale, annually we have to have our scales tested by weights and measures, so that comes out of this line. Let's see, our landfill, we have a couple of expenditures there, mainly now water sampling. We have monitoring wells around the landfill that are required to be sampled a couple times a year. Our mowing of the landfill, we've been using the same contractor that does the roadside mowing and the pond mowing. He has a little bit different equipment for the landfill, but the slope mowing there. If we had any pest control at the landfill, a couple years ago we had some groundhogs that were taken over. That can unfortunately cause some holes in the liner and some water quality issues. So they are no more. So that's, I think, pretty much everything that comes out of that one.
All right, thank you. And then another question, under operating supplies, I see the actuals went down significantly from 22 to 23. What was that pertaining to?
So that line is primarily when we order curbside barrels, replacements for the curbside program. We've made one small order of wheels and axles, but we haven't made our large barrel order yet for the year, but we're going to try to get one in before the end of the year if we can. Those are, just as you might imagine, a regular consumable item, unfortunately, with the wear and tear they get.
So you're projecting maybe you'll be at 20,000,
Right.
If not more?
We're limited by Rarig Pacific is the company that makes the barrels, and we try to stay consistent because if we have a broken wheel, we try to replace it rather than replace the whole barrel, that sort of thing. So we try to stay with the same manufacturer for lids, barrels. They require an entire skid truckload basically purchase at a time. You can't do partial quantities. So
Okay, thank you. And then one last question.
Yep.
On the fleet maintenance, and you probably mentioned this already, but I might have missed it, the increase in actuals over budget for the past 2 years.
Yes. Mainly curbside, well, this is all the solid waste fleet maintenance only. So here it's the 3 curbside trucks. We have 2 tractor trailer units. Any of our live floor trailers that we have. The backhoe at the transfer station, the Bobcat at the transfer station, and the pickup truck. Majority of this is our curbside trucks. Pretty complicated setups, and I don't think we're doing anything differently. They just seem to have some pretty significant repairs, mainly engine related, both the curbside trucks and the tractor trailers, but the curbside in particular. A lot of the emissions control systems have changed, and frankly, I don't think a lot of the manufacturers have got it really nailed down, so consistently getting codes that are thrown or engine derate signals that are sent, and then you have to operate at half speed or go park the thing and spin up the carbon burn cycle. So we've had a lot of engine-related and emission-related repairs on the curbside trucks. Could probably pull more if you really want.
Well, as a
lot
follow-up,
of
I mean,
great-
is the, I guess the frequency of the repairs increasing and also the significance of the repair increasing?
Certainly frequency. We almost always have one of the 3 curbside trucks out of service. It's more a board question, but I've indicated to them when the new truck comes, I might want to hang on to the outgoing and then go to 4 trucks just so we can be a little bit more convinced we'll always have a backup truck, because being without is not a good place to be.
Right.
Trash doesn't stop rolling, so we kind of always have to have a way to get it picked up. It's a balance we try to strike between replacement cycle and how often are you replacing these trucks versus how much is it costing you, additionally each year because you're holding on to them for 10 years instead of 5 or 6. I don't know, it's kind of a moving target. We try to maximize it if we can,
But
but
it's really the impact is just the curbside vehicles.
that's the biggest, for
Okay.
sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Melanie?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, given that the numbers have been climbing up over the last 2 years, and I don't see that they're going to need less repairs over time, right? Would it be wise to raise the amount for this line to cover the anticipated for next year, since you said that we probably wouldn't see the new vehicle quickly?
I'm gonna, be one of those situations where if I tell you to raise it too much, then we probably won't spend it. And if we don't do anything with it, we'll have, I did increase it by 20,000. As you saw, I increased from the previous year by 30,000, and I still undershot. So am I confident we'll be at 140 or less? Not really. I think having a 4th curbside truck, one, because you're 33% of the fleet or a quarter of the fleet is brand new versus used. But also, we might not be quite so inclined to say, hey, Peterbilt, you need to come pick up this truck because we can't afford to have 2 trucks, go down. We need you to repair this faster than we can get to it. So I think we might see some savings there with the curbside trucks in particular, but I don't know. I can't. Again, I try not to overshoot on the upward end if I can help it, but I could be back. I could just as easily be back here next year, having gone over the 140 as well. So.
Thank you.
Laura?
Page 31, 45930, recycling. Do you have a more up-to-date, year-to-date?
Sorry, it's which line was it?
Sorry.
45930?
Yep.
Okay. We're at 118 right now. And that was through, I think the last invoice I saw was 10/31. So the end of October billing. So we still have full November plus December on that.
Wait, say that again?
Your year-to-date says 107,316 for end of October.
Yeah, when I looked today, so that
think that's
that
end of
was
November?
pulled in the system as of the
Okay.
end of October.
Okay.
But the last bills we've received have caught up to the date this report was made, if that makes sense. So as of today, we're at 118,000, and that doesn't include any November billing or any December billing.
Okay. I'm gonna have a follow-up, but I need a minute.
Allison?
I kind of have a follow-up for this. Did I hear you correctly? You said that you believe about 25% of our trash disposal could be compostable?
That's
Possibly.
industry-wide, that's kind of the estimate.
The estimate? Okay, thanks.
All right, anything else on page 31 or 32?
No, 31 still.
Gotcha. Give you a
Thank
second,
you,
Laura.
sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Same question for tipping for the more up-to-date, year-to-date?
Yes. So we're at 306,000 as of today. And same, we have no billing yet for November or December.
And same for bulky waste as well?
Bulky waste, that's at 73,000. I didn't check the invoicing on that one. I presume it's pretty close. Usually they lag a couple weeks.
Okay.
Just gonna give the committee maybe another 30 seconds.
It's
okay. We still have time.
Okay.
We have next Tuesday as well, so
Okay.
if there's additional questions. The department heads will be here. All right. Anything else? Adam, thank you for sitting in the hot seat. You're all set.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to hear from our last department, fire department. So we're going to come back at 7:55 sharp. Sure. Okay, welcome back. I'm gonna welcome up Fire Chief Murray and Deputy Chief. Are you coming up as well? Selick?
Thank you.
Are you coming up as well, or are you just gonna sit back? Okay, no problem. I just wanted to ask. I don't know.
Well, while we got his attention, if I may, this
Yep.
is Ben Selleck, my second in command deputy chief. He's been with us since June, and showing the budget process.
Okay, so hot seat next year, but welcome to the team and thank you for coming tonight. All right, Chief, so like all the other, you've been to all the other presentations, so just kick us off and give us a brief overview, and then I'm sure this committee's gonna have questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So in your package, I'm sure you've got the fire department's overview. Looking ahead at the 2024 budget, basically, the fire department does a number of different service delivery type activities, including fire suppression, emergency medical, hazardous material and special operations responses, community risk reduction, which is the name brand. We changed the brand this year. Community risk reduction is the old fire prevention and school education and all that. We're responsible for emergency management and planning. We have the community emergency response team, which has been in operation for a number of years. These are community people that volunteer their time. And we also do a lot of community outreach. Before you on the graph below is our performance summary for last year. I did hand out a updated one for you for tonight. So as you can see, the fire and EMS calls for service continue to rise. As of today's date, we're at 2,590 calls, and we're projecting that we will go up around 2,825 calls for the combination fire, EMS, service calls, anything you can think of up along those lines.
Chief, can you break that down? Fire, how many fires, how many calls for fire, EMS? Can you break that down for us?
I can. That'll come on the next page.
Great.
We've got it broken down on a chart for you.
Chief, if I could just ask, is this just for Goffstown, or is this also surrounding communities that I know that you go out on calls for?
So this is for Goffstown, but in that big number, if we go to those places, that...
It is included?
Yeah, that's included as part of the call.
Thank you.
And what percentage of calls are mutual aid calls, roughly?
I don't have a specific number, but I certainly will get it to you.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, keep going, sorry.
Actually, yeah, where I've got it, but let me see real quick if I can.
What was your question?
The
What
breakdown.
percent of the calls were?
Mutual aid calls.
I definitely have it, I just,
That's okay, if you need to get back to us, you feel free to email the committee or email Catherine and she'll get it to me.
okay. Yeah, I've got a sheet, I can provide you the number of calls, percentages, and all of that.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And can you deny mutual aid calls? You can, correct?
We do.
You do. Can you also get a percentage of the ones you do, how many you deny? And then what you respond to?
We don't really track that,
You don't?
no.
Okay.
Because if we deny the call, we don't take a number for it, you know, a response number that we use to keep track of calls. There's a national system
Yeah.
for every call that we do. It's called National Fire Information, NIFRS, and we assign a just like a police department with a case number to it.
Yep.
So if we say, no, we're not going, we don't create that incident.
Just to follow up there, I think it would be important to track it. I don't know if that's something to think about, just because if you're, I think it would help your numbers to know if you're not able to respond, maybe that's because you need more firefighters or
Right.
whatever. I'm just putting it out there. I think
Even if internally.
yeah, even if internally, I think it would be something interesting to see.
Yep.
Help you in the future.
Right, okay, so I made the mistake of asking a question prematurely, so I'm gonna let you go.
So you started all of us going.
That was my mistake, so I'm gonna let you go and then we'll do questions after.
So, and again, so I'll just go back to that graph real quick, and as you see, the point is the calls do continue to rise, and we project that they will with a lot of projects going on. So, on page 3 is the 2022 types of fire and EMS calls for service that we do. And the graph depicts, obviously, our biggest call volume is EMS and rescue. Then it's broken down into fires. It says we had 70 fires. That doesn't mean we had 70 building fires. It means we had 70 types of fires, car fires, brush fires, appliance fires. Structure fires, we probably are up around maybe 8, 9 a year, actual structure fires. False alarms and false calls is 7%, service calls 15%, hazardous conditions are 4%, good intent and weather, we had 174 or 6%. I think it's that El Nino thing coming at us, but we certainly are seeing a lot more of, weather events. Moving forward, if there's no questions on that piece, I'll tell you a little bit about what we accomplished this year in our performance summary. So we completed the final design specification for a 2022 Pierce Enforcer engine, and that cost was $703,313. Fortunately, that came in $61,700 below what we had allocated for CIP. CIP had allocated $775. We'll probably never see a fire engine for $775,000 again. And deliveries expected in January. If you watch the fire department Facebook page, we get an update every Friday with pictures and where it is in the process. So it's actually got a frame now, and it's moving on down the line. We also completed a final design spec for a 2023 Ford F-150 PL Custom Ambulance. This ambulance replaced an ambulance that was involved in an accident back in 2020. And the ambulance, it was during icy conditions, hit a pole and didn't look like it was damaged at all, but when they went to look at it deeper, the frame was bent. So that ambulance was covered fully by insurance, and we're going to talk a lot about supply issues and demand. It's going to take 2 years to get this ambulance, so probably sometime in 2025 we'll see that ambulance. We ordered and have received delivery of a Ford F-250 utility pickup truck. We are just waiting to have it fit up, radios, and all that. We completed the regrading and paving of the rear parking lot at Fire Station 18. For us, that was huge because it was a mud puddle before. But and I do want to recognize Adam, because he worked with Continental, and they literally wiped it out in like 2 days. So and we used those funds that you gave us last year for that. We completed the $1.8 million fire and police department radio infrastructure project. You may recall that American Rescue Plan funds were used, and I'm here to tell you that it is 100% successful. It is amazing, the improvement in our radio system, and along comes with that a significant improvement in safety of, our firefighters and police. I could literally hear it in Worcester, Mass. Okay? It's become that good. So Chief Serino and his staff really did a great job with it, and so far, it's working great. We had a petition warrant article for a facility study at Station 17 on Terrell Hill. That's been completed. It started in April and just finished back in October. I presented it to the board earlier this week at a selectmen's meeting. They're reviewing it now, and at some point in the future, we'll discuss that study. We evaluated and tested and implemented early warning system for residents downstream of Glen Falls. They actually updated the alert system they had. They used to have an old fire department pager box. They've now gone with Red Alert. So we accomplished that. We also had a major tabletop exercise on dam flooding and failure and everything too. We've replaced a number of lighting fixtures and installed automatic light turn-off switches throughout the fire stations, and also replacing old window air conditioners with new energy efficient ones. That's an ongoing project, so, and we're actually seeing some minor savings in electricity. We've experienced a number of vacancies throughout this budget year. And I've gone to the board and told them it's coming close to a crisis situation. I currently have 7 vacancies. Fortunately, I have 2 conditional offers, so that'll bring it down to 5. I don't know if you've just heard it in general. Go Google it, but fire and police nationwide have significant shortages. And we're struggling. So we've actually have to go back in a way to how we used to hire. And what we're doing is we have a number of programs going. We have an internship program with the high school. We've reconnected with St. A's College, who has their own rescue squad. And we've entered into a program called Invest New Hampshire. You probably heard up there at the legislature. And so we're going to have 9 St. A's students become EMTs, and this program's going to pay for that to get them certified and everything. And then we're also getting involved in a program called Skill Bridge. It's a military program, and basically what they do is they'll take someone in the military that's maybe a year out from getting out of the service, and they let them intern with, in our case, with the fire department. And they continue to pay them, and we train them, and at the end, we come out with a trained firefighter EMT. So that's what we're faced with today. I did approach the board a month or so ago because of our vacancies. We're literally beating up these guys, because of the shortages. In some cases, they're not even taking overtime because they can only do work so much, before I retired. The board supported me and allowed me to raise some part-time all firefighter hourly rates to recruit some per diem EMTs to come in and cover the ambulance to help lessen some of that stress going on. And when we did that, within 2 weeks, I had 10 applicants, for per diem and calls. So I'm hoping that's going to take some of the pressure off them. My goals for 2024, again, maintain a strong recruitment and retention effort to maintain or really recover my current staffing levels. And I just explained the strategies we're going to use. Maintain, service, and repair our fleet of fire vehicles and apparatus. Our preventive maintenance program is demonstrating it does give us a reduction in service costs because we're continually maintaining and keeping them up. And we're continuing to maintain and upgrade our fire facilities to keep them in a reliable state also. We're doing minor upgrades to our HVAC and lighting and other energy-saving initiatives. We've also done some security upgrades to the Church Street station. We've now secured all doors with electronic keypads and entry. And we're working on Station 19 next. This year, we're going to be requesting funding to replace specialized ropes and rescue equipment that's beyond its recommended serviceable age. Our current equipment is between 15 and 20 years old. That includes ropes, carabiners, all that technical rescue equipment you would see at a above grade or a below grade rescue. And we're going to continue to develop a Citizens Emergency Response Team. The CERT group, I think overall we have at least 20 to 30 volunteers. They're very active in the community. They support the Main Street program, the regatta. They work with the state and Manchester on an evacuation shelter. They assist both police and fire when we need them. So both of us use them as a resource if, you know, we can't get enough staff. They can do some basic traffic control or things like that. And then under emergency management, we're continue to meet and partner with the school district and the police on school emergency planning, training, and securing. And we're also working with them for a potential grant for a generator for the high school here. Under CIP, the only CIP thing I have this year is the $250,000 request for the apparatus capital reserve fund. I know the members of the committee know the value of that, especially, you know, at the cost of apparatus. So it truly lessens the impact to the taxpayer when you build that up over time. On page 7, we'll start, this will cover the fire budget part and the overview. So this year, our wage and wage-related lines is up 2.98%, and that's mainly because of the fire contracts that we have in place. The local 3420 will be negotiating next year for a new contract. This is finishing up. Pete, is this the third year? Pete, third year? Second? Second. Overtime pay is up 53.19% for about $118,000. That is because of the 7 vacancies we have. And actually, year-to-date, I am just under 200,000 over my overtime budget. I have kept the board made aware of that. Another thing on that too, when you're going to go through the budget, you're going to see a lot of unexpended or very low unexpended lines, and that is because I'm definitely afraid of, you know, overspending my budget. So I really have been holding back on a lot of the lines just to make sure, you know, that we don't get into trouble. as I look, I've got a month left, I'm feeling a little better. So I have purchased some things, but you're definitely going to see the lower lines. We have that SAFER grant offsetting revenue. So we basically have about another year, which is covering 4 firefighters, and that's $377,000 revenue that we bring in from there. Our facility maintenance, repairs, and projects is down 27%, or about $11,000. Diesel fuel is up. I'm sure you've heard that throughout all the deliberations, both diesel and gas. So our total fire operations payroll-related costs are up 7.27%, or about $204,000. The total fire operations, which is non-payroll, which is everything in that budget, we're going to go through except salaries and stuff, that's up 8.13%, or about $47,000. And the majority of that is directly related to an increase in costs in just about everything. And then I mentioned our CIP request. So on the graph for my fire budget overview, you can see what the breakdown is. The fire piece of my budget is $3,647,128. Any questions? Or keep going?
Keep going, yeah.
Okay. Next on page 8 is our fire EMS budget overview. I'll just remind you, remember this is a enterprise fund. So money that we receive from ambulance billing goes into this fund and is used solely for specific EMS areas, which is required by the law also. So our wage and wage-related costs are down 5.58%, or around $7,000. Basically, part of that is because of vacancies, and we split taking funds from the fire budget and the EMS budget. If we have someone working an EMS per diem shift, we take it out of this revolving fund. And we take a certain amount of a firefighter's pay because they're AEMTs out of that enterprise fund also. Our part-time wages are down. Again, that's because of a low number of per diems that we have. Overtime pay is up 32%. Diesel fuel, again, that's down 49%. And our gasoline went up 12,000. That's because the new ambulance that we're going to receive is going to be gas and not diesel. So we just did a swap shift between gas and diesel. So our total EMS operations and payroll is up 0.85, or about 2,000, and our non-payroll costs are up 10.55, or 21,400%. As you can see on the graph, wages is 59% of that whole budget, and operating costs 16%. So the FY24 request for EMS is $550,726. Also, just real quick in that EMS budget, we carefully watch what we have in it, because that goes towards buying for ambulances down the road too. So we will only allocate a certain percentage of that money for any of our operations or anything else, so we can make sure we have the money to purchase ambulances in the future. Page 9 is emergency management. Basically, that's level funded this year. Our CERT team costs are down a little. So overall from last year, it's down 4.74, about $500. that budget is $10,272.
Thank you, Chief. All right, so I'm going to open it up to questions. Laura.
Thank you. So the kind of new ways you're getting guys to kind of join or train.
Or gals.
Or gals. I used guys as a thing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do they have to stay for a certain period of time because they've kind of gone through this training with you, or, you know what I mean?
They don't, but we are currently working on something that come up with some form of a training agreement.
Yeah, I think that's important.
I think you'd all be surprised to know that it takes approximately, in a one-year period, from start to finish with a new employee, even though they have basic certs, around $130,000 is what it costs us for a year. So.
Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at page 21, when I look at your regular wages and your overtime wages for actual year-to-date, I know that you're paying, we're way over budget for overtime pay. That's because we've lost, or we don't have all of our positions filled. I know that as we look at 2024, we're drastically increasing the overtime pay, but the regular wages are staying as they are. Do you anticipate us being able to fill those positions, and therefore we would be dropping our overtime pay, or not?
I am, and when you see that full-time line and how we've funded it, you know, when we say we're gonna pay time and a half, the time piece is that full-time line. The half piece is that overtime line. And also, when we were calculating that piece, we only used theoretical 5 positions and only a third of the projected vacancies we're gonna have. So all the other overtime that you see in there is overtime that we had previously. If I can, Mr. Chairman, I just give out a handout, but I knew the question was coming. This is a breakdown of overtime. You probably don't want to sit and read it tonight, but it gives you an entire explanation of why our overtime is like it is, how we're covering these vacancies, and you know, trying to make up that difference. Beautiful. And certainly anyone can contact me, you know, offline too, to bring you through that.
And we can always review this and talk about it Tuesday as well.
Right. And if I think I just lost my train of thought, but yeah, basically that's going to break it down for you, and then certainly I'm open to having anyone ask questions.
Okay, Jared.
Sticking on line 21, if I go down further to clothing and uniforms, I just see that there's a $3,000 increase. Our actuals and year-to-dates have been kind of the same. Is this just because clothing's getting more expensive and it's more specialized?
It is more expensive. Pair of pants is up $90. A pair of boots is $300.
And if I can follow, how much of that is earmarked towards individuals, like on average, for your staff? So if we're saying that $19,000 is going to be for next year, is that for how many staff members?
So we don't break it down per individual. We have a, we basically buy them their uniforms. We keep the stock and everything. So initially, a new firefighter gets like 3 pair of pants, 3 shirts, an outside jacket, shoes, belt. But after that, if they need new uniforms, they come to us and we use that money to allocate it to them.
Go ahead.
I'll just keep going.
Does that?
Yep. That
Staying
works.
on line, or page 21, employee development, I know that I'm very passionate about employee development. It looks like we really haven't met our budget for the past prior years. Do we actually have a plan of action? Are people taking classes, or are we going to use the $18,000, or is it something that can be reduced?
Okay, so this is actually for the higher education, master degree programs, and we do have people in that program now. We're just at the end of the year. Matter of fact, I just signed a purchase order for the deputy. He's going for his master's degree. So we will utilize that. And there's also funding in there. I'm not exactly sure if it's on the fire or the EMS or if we split it, but we have, we allocate $10,000 a year for a paramedic. And currently we have a paramedic in school. So that's quarterly billing. So it'll definitely catch up to itself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Laura, and then I'm gonna go back around.
Thank you. Back up to the regular wages. So the 2024, that's got funds for 5 more positions that you're hoping to fill. Is that right?
That is actually for full funding for 24 firefighters, full-time firefighters.
Right, but does that includes positions that aren't currently
Yes.
filled?
Yes.
Okay, and are there 5 of them?
Yeah,
Okay.
5 now.
Okay.
With the 2 I just hired or am hiring.
Great, thank you.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Laura actually clarified one of my questions, but I had a procedural question. It just seems like we're doing it a little differently than we did previous nights. Are we going to go through, Mr. Chair, like by line where we go one page, or would you like us to go through it and then pepper the chief with
Well,
everything? Because we were kind of jumping around on DPW, and I was just thinking expediency
It
and
might
what
be
your
better.
expectation
No,
was.
I mean, I did see a lot of questions on DPW, so I'm happy to go through the budget. I just thought if there were any overview questions,
Yeah.
not specifically on lines, to ask those, but hopefully only ask them once. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, on page 3, so for the purchase of the 22 Pierce Enforcer engine, and there was,
Brian,
I guess,
if you wouldn't mind, would you mind give me the
page 3.
the 4, 7?
Oh, no, we're on
Talking about your priority.
Page 3.
For your front page.
In your overview.
Oh,
your pie chart.
you're in the overview?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, the overarching before the line item. Yeah, to repeat, my question was, for the unused appropriations for this 22 Pierce Enforcer engine, this is more of a clarification, I guess. Do those funds go back into the apparatus capital reserve fund?
Yes, they do.
So
By
not
law.
back to the tax, and was this a warrant, or was this,
Yeah, it's a warrant article.
so it doesn't
on
go back to the
capital.
taxpayers, it goes back to, okay,
If I may.
yeah.
The funds are not withdrawn from the capital reserve fund until the purchase is made, and then only the amount of the purchase is withdrawn. So the capital reserve funds are put into that account by the voters, and they are only expended as a reimbursement.
So it gets voted in at 775, we spend 703.
No, we vote in the 250,000 a year.
Oh, okay, that's right.
And then they expend whatever the price of it is, and the difference,
Remains there.
the difference just stays in the fund.
So there's more of a transfer, but again, my question is like, why wouldn't the money go back to the taxpayers?
It's already in the fund. It was voted to go in the fund. So it's gonna, just because it cost a little less than what they anticipated, we approved the 250,000 of the fund, and then they expended it.
It's like having your savings account at 1.2 million, the fire,
I
the
wish.
fire engine 700 something, that's all you're withdrawing out.
It's a
Okay.
separate bank account entirely.
Do you know the current balance of the capital reserve fund?
I do have it.
I know someone that does.
Can I help Brian? Brian, so the capital reserve fund, though, stays there for multiple things. It wasn't a fund set up for just that fire truck. Is that where you're, that's why the additional funds stay there for the next thing that they'll need to buy that's big?
No, it is just for the fire truck.
No.
Right, but it's for all the
No,
fire
no,
trucks.
it's
It's not
just
just for
into
that
the
one.
CIP.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello.
All right, all right.
Hello.
Peter, go ahead.
That is a fund for equipment, fire equipment, motorized more or less. We had, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, one of our, I don't know, it was Explorer or something, the body rotted out, wouldn't pass inspection, we needed the vehicle, and we were able to go into that fund to buy a vehicle. So it's to buy vehicles for the fire department. As the chief related earlier, our next fire truck is probably going to be around $1.2, $1.5 million. And so we just put this fund, every year we put that amount of money in there. So when that time comes, you don't have a $1.5 million hit to the tax base. You're spreading it out all over. So you would not return it back to the taxpayers, because that wouldn't make any sense, because if you need a truck next year, you'd have to buy out of cash, you know what I'm saying?
I do, but I think respectfully, I think, like my constituents and as a taxpayer, you're limiting our ability to vote on things that are specific to an apparatus.
No, you are voting on it, Brian. You're voting on a capital reserve fund.
Of a certain amount that goes into a pool of money.
That purchases
So respectfully, I
equipment.
think, I don't like that setup.
It is the voters that voted to create that account.
I agreed on this.
Yeah. Okay. Danielle, do you have the money, the exact dollar amount?
The balance as of right now is $722,000.
How
much
after? That's after.
722.
722. And that's after we just bought that fire truck? Yeah, obviously.
We have not
Oh.
paid for that fire truck.
We haven't paid for the 2022 fire truck?
No.
Okay.
Nope, we get it out after we make, once we receive the vehicle, we'll make payment, and then we'll get reimbursement from the fund. Because we aren't collecting taxes for that, we were, showing that as an offsetting revenue.
So then once we buy the fire truck, we'll go from, what did you just say?
722.
722, and then we just subtract.
No, that's already taken into account for minus.
And then we subtract 703. So then,
That's the balance, isn't it?
So we'll have $15,000 in that fund once it's taken out.
I'll confirm.
Please do.
Okay.
That'd be awesome.
69.
I'll let you know now.
Okay. I'm going to let anybody else who has not asked a question yet.
Oh.
All right. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 4. This is kind of looking ahead about the offsetting revenue concerning the SAFER grant. So I know that sunsets next year, or terminates. So what is our strategies or plans so that additional budget doesn't hit the taxpayers?
So over the 4 years of this grant, it starts out, they fund so much of it, and then it starts going less and less. So as it's doing that, we've been adding to that.
Yeah, so what is the strategy or a plan? You're looking at $400,000 that it's going to increase your budget.
Right, so by the time we get to the fourth year, over these 4 years, we would have built up the funding to cover it.
Okay, so we're adding more hardship to the taxpayers to cover that $400,000. Is that what
I guess what Brian's trying to say is that once the grant expires, is there any plan from the department to cut those positions if they're not filled?
No.
Or that's what I think the question was.
As part of that federal grant, you commit that you're going to keep those positions.
Okay.
Well, that the reason you're going for the grant is to increase your staffing to protect the public.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up to that
Yes,
one?
Laura.
Thank you. So is this a grant you can apply for again, once it's?
There is a possibility, they've changed, that we can apply for this grant again to cover the positions, but there's absolutely no guarantee.
Of course, but it is, when it runs out, you can reapply for it.
Right.
Okay.
And I hope you will.
Yeah.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't remember the figures exactly with the SAFER grant, but currently is the government only reimbursing for is it 30% of that? It's not 100, it was initially 100%, but as you said, is it stepped down the actual sunsetting clause where?
Actually, the last few years,
Yeah.
they have been doing 100%.
Oh, has it the last year? Okay, but that's
The
what you were
last-
saying that it.
The last grant
After.
was
1
4
second.
years fully funded.
After. Lauren. Go ahead, finish your thought.
No, it was just confirming so that this is that second SAFER grant that came in at 100% for 4.
Right.
But you've been building in similar to the structure, the fee not fee, but the reimbursement structure of the first Safer grant, where it
Correct.
was like 100%, 70, 60, 30.
75.
Yeah, they went in quarters, yeah.
50, and then maybe 25, yes.
Okay, so next year, we're not going to see 377,000, we'll see 25% increase.
This
No.
is good till November of 2024. Then it sunsets.
So we are going to see the $300,000.
Well, that's just what I was clarifying, because he said we have been building it in, so that's what I was asking. Has it been built in at the same rate, or are we seeing the 100%?
Okay, Peter, do you have a question? Are you all
No,
set?
I just-
Jared, you're next.
It's a
and then
statement,
Danielle.
and Peter, I think, hopefully, you may agree with me. We are budgeting, so this is our budget, this is an expense that we're looking at. What we're talking about is a revenue, and the revenue is going to be diminished over time, which means, yes, the taxpayers are going to have to fill the gap, if you will. So the numbers are the numbers. We already have those people in this budget. We've had these people in this budget for the past 3 years. What we're really talking about is that revenue piece, which we don't really look at as a board. Well, we do look at it, but we don't vote on it, if you will. So I know that there's some, what I'm hearing is, should we cut these people? That would be something that would happen in future budgets. It would be that line item that you would cut by however many people you want to, but that would be for the future budget committee and select board to actually do.
Can I just comment on that real quick?
Yes.
Almost right.
Damn it.
Because that grant expires in November
So,
of
if-
'24, so you'll have those 4 firefighters for December of '24. That be accurate?
Yes.
Danielle?
Yes, it's just that the revenue goes away.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
correct, the
Danielle.
appropriations there.
You had something.
I was just going to answer the question, the 705, I mistakenly spoke there, I was corrected that it was already paid. We did a prepayment of the full contract, and it saved us approximately 30,000 by prepaying that contract. So we did get reimbursement from the fund, so that balance of 722 is as of today.
Correct. Perfect.
Thank you.
But on the safety side, you always get a performance bond too, so that's
Yes.
how we don't just say, here's your money.
Okay, so any overall questions, or can we go right into the budget and we can go to the lines? Perfect, let's do that. All right, Chief, so you ready? We're gonna go start with fire, page 21. Any questions, page 21? And Chief, you'll be here on Tuesday as well, right? So we'll have time to review this overtime packet and talk
Yes,
about that?
yes.
Okay. So maybe we can table that.
What are we?
Or not. I'm just like spitballing. If you have questions on overtime, you can review the packet as well. Laura.
Thank you. Back to the regular full-time wages, that first line. And I don't even know if this is a question or a comment, to be honest. I'm wondering if it's because it's very hopeful to say in the next year we will hire 5 more people considering the past. Of course, we'd love that, but I don't know if funding 5 more is reasonable at the rate that we've been hiring. I'm just throwing that out for consideration, I guess.
Can I just answer that real quick? If you don't budget for it, you won't be able to hire them when they come available.
That is true. Yep.
So if you don't have the money to pay them when they do become available.
You can't take them.
Right.
Yep, totally.
Sam.
I just in like a response to that, I feel like the chief did a really great job of explaining that he's partnering up with like this military program and all these other programs that are gonna like I fully believe that we can find 5 more firefighters if we team up. I mean, it seems like it's like a recruiting agency basically, and like I think that's gonna. I think like we're gonna hire 7 people. Like I'm all about it. I think it's gonna be great. I'm super optimistic.
I think she's
Good.
good.
You know.
Awesome. Any questions on page 21?
It's gonna happen.
Sorry, Jared, go ahead.
Thank you. Just looking at the last line, physical examinations. This isn't something covered by health insurance?
No, this is occupational health. which is specific for firefighters. So they get a full cardiac workup. They have to take pulmonary function tests, blood tests. There's a NFPA standard, National Fire Protection Standard for the health and safety of firefighters, and so that's specific to that.
May I follow? Does each member have to go through that, or is this like once every 3 years, once every 5 years?
So you get an initial hire, and then every year after, it depends how old you are. Like, guess who goes every year? But it's a lesser physical too, you know? You get that major one, and then you go through the checkup, if you will.
Great, thank you, Chief.
Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a follow-up to that, is that mandatory or is that volunteer-based?
It's mandatory.
Okay. Thank you.
And I should tell you too, the value of it, you can't put money on it because in this last year, we've had 2 people get diagnosed with cancer. So, or, you know, cardiac issues or anything like that. So you can't, hopefully it saves their lives, you know.
Okay, we're going to page 22. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like 2/3 the way down under turnouts, 47950.
Yep.
Well, the first question, what is turnouts? And then also there's an increase in
So-
your request.
So turnout is the fire coat, the specialized fire coat, pants, gloves, helmet, fire protective hood.
It's all PPE stuff?
Yep.
Okay.
Boots, fire protection boots.
Okay.
And again, the price is going up on them.
All right, thank you.
It's probably about $5,000 to outfit someone in gear like that, minimum.
Okay. No, another
okay.
question. Further up, operating supplies. I see your 22 and 23 actuals were way below your budget, but yeah, you're asking for 35,000.
Yeah, let me go take a look at that.
So 47120.
Yep, let me pull it
I
up.
want to see.
What was the number again? 4120?
No, 47120. It's on page 22, the 5th line down.
Okay, so these are funds to provide for the cost to maintain and operate fire department equipment, to purchase and replace needed equipment, which will allow us to function and provide service. Some examples are every year that our ground ladders that we use to climb buildings, those have to be tested. So there's money for that. Fire extinguisher service. This year, we're asking for one of those thermal imaging cameras. It's a heat sensing camera. The current ones we have are like 10 years old and they're obsolete, so that's why that bump this year.
Is that for one unit or multiple
Yeah,
units?
that's for one. That alone was 11,000. And then there's just general supplies, tools, and equipment
Okay.
for 12,000.
All right, thank you.
So that's 23, and then the rest were those smaller ones.
Okay, anything else on page 22? Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a follow-up to that, would that line include the ropes and the the specialized rope equipment that you said you'd be asking for, or is that a different?
That's in a different,
Okay. Thank
I
you.
can get you that if you want it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
All right.
Thanks.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Further down, 47850, hose expenses. I think the average actuals over the 22 and 23 is lower than what you're asking, so is you projecting to have more expenses for hoses, or is the materials more expensive?
This is one of the lines I held back on.
Yeah,
We have ordered hose this year.
you have.
Yeah,
So your actuals are probably higher than 285 then?
it is.
Do you know what the amount is?
So this is probably like an end of the year expense that are you
Yeah,
purchasing a hose now?
Typically, all the hose gets tested in the summer. You gotta put pressure to it,
Yeah.
and depending on how old the hose is, if it bursts or starts leaking, then we replace it. Some years, it may only be a couple hundred feet. Other years, it could be 400 to 500. And there's 3 or 4 sizes of hose, 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches, 2.5. You got 4-inch hose, you have 5-inch hose, and as you go up that line, it gets more and more expensive.
All right, thank you.
Just one question.
Go ahead.
Do nozzles come out of that line?
No, I believe that
Because I
comes
just
out
saw a
of...
bill come through
that
for
comes
some
out of-
nozzles, for a nozzle or something.
Yeah.
No big deal, I just wondered if that's where it came from.
Okay. Page 23. Laura?
Thank you. So down toward in the middle of the page, 52440, radio repairs, and then hazardous materials, a couple lines down. I'm guessing those are 2 other lines that you kind of held off on and will now do your spending, that you're like kind of in a safer zone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and you purchased new radios, right? So you're not going to spend a lot of that line this year.
So these are, that is batteries for portable radios,
Okay.
parts to fix them.
Okay. Stacy?
Mr. Chair, the alarm repairs, you didn't spend any in 2022. Actual for this year is only 58, but you're going up to 12.
So this is, you know the fire alarm boxes, the little red
Yeah.
boxes? So that's for the repair and maintenance of those and the lines. And we have expended quite a bit this year with the ice storm and everything. We had to replace Lauren Lane, the whole line there. We had to replace some older line along Mast Road. And it also includes, when they put a new pole in, we have to get a contractor out to move our fire alarm cable. So that's what those are.
Follow-up question.
And-
How often are those used?
So we don't have many on the poles anymore.
Right.
But they're used quite a bit in businesses.
is the
Businesses
same
tie,
thing?
yeah, their
Okay.
fire alarm into that.
Okay, thank you.
It's probably one of the most reliable systems even today. It's copper wire. And it's,
Don't tell people that.
it'll take a beating, you know?
Okay. We're moving to page 24. So that's going to finish up the fire budget.
We've got an EMS in there too.
No, just the fire part of the budget.
Yeah,
And then we'll
yeah.
move on to EMS. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so on page 24, the last line item there, hydrants, wet, dry, and cisterns. Actuals over the past 2 years that you're asking for 219. Are there projects you're working on here?
Nope, that's the increase that we're billed for fire hydrants.
Really?
It's the biggest mystery in the fire service is we pay for our fire hydrants. But because the water system is private. It happens in every town too. Even if the town owns the water still charges for the fire hydrant.
Okay, so we have a short emergency management budget. Not a whole lot of increase there, actually zero. Any questions on that? Brian?
Yeah, just one question. What constitutes equipment for 1750 under emergency management?
All right, let me grab it.
So I see there's no actuals in 22, but yet your actuals in 23 are above budget, so I'm just curious what that.
I know part of it's for equipment up in the Emergency Operations Center. It might be things like for the CERT team, for some of their equipment.
Okay.
We buy them jackets, flashlights, all that other stuff.
Okay, so that's a pretty broad category, okay. Thank you.
Melanie?
Thank you. I have a question, and please forgive me if you've already answered this somewhere in here. On line 53475, the facility repairs on page 24.
Yep.
You've hit almost exactly on the budget in the following years, in the previous years rather, but now it's being reduced by $11,000.
So
Yeah,
part of that was for the paving of the rear parking lot. So there was 25,000 in it, so we dropped it down there.
Thank you. That was exactly, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to fire, EMS revenue fund. So that's page 42, it's a big jump. So if you remember, this is the fund that pays for itself. Pays for itself. People see the quotes on.
See, I had it different.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What page you got on the top there?
42.
42.
I only have 28 pages.
It's a big jump.
No, it did jump.
I'm gonna ask you a question in the last session.
Yeah, where's that?
But I don't think you're gonna have to move back up.
The EMS budget?
It's still in the fire budget. It's the next page.
He has a combined report. You guys have it broken up by tab.
Oh, I got you.
EMS on ours is on 25, the old one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Yep. All set.
Okay, Chief, I just had a little bit of a recap, and I just wanted to, I guess, get your confirmation on this. You had said you're down 7, you're down 7 staff, and you're hiring 2. So you're short staffed. The Safer Grants revenue stream is stopping as of 11/20/2024, and you're anticipating hiring is, 5, maybe 4, maybe 5. So just looking at the differences in numbers between this year's budget to the taxpayers, there's going to be an extra $378,000 that will need to be made up that the Safer Grant revenue stream was doing. Plus an additional, let's assume 4 new firefighters, that's another $378. So that, I guess what I'm saying is, it sounds to me like there's a $756,000 swing in that area from this year to next year. Does that seem accurate?
No.
I'm gonna let the chief, go ahead, chief.
No, there isn't. There is,
And Danielle.
Over the 4 years of the grant, go ahead if you want, but
I was just going to say, just to clarify, there's no proposal for new positions. So the positions that you see in the appropriation include those from the SAFER grant as well as the vacancies that were discussed.
He's short 7 people, and that's what he's gonna hire.
Right, but.
Already included in the budget.
4
They are
firefighters
in-
right now that are
Already
under the
included.
SAFER grant.
Yep.
That revenue stream is stopping.
Correct.
So the 4 firefighters that we're getting 378,000 in revenue for, that 378 is going away, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so the taxpayers need to make that up. Now, assuming we hire 4 more.
They're not 4
They're
more
not
firefighters,
proposed.
they're replacements.
They're already
Yeah.
existing.
We already had those people. They're
Gotcha.
gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we,
So it's
if-
just the 3.
So that's already
you'd
in.
have to reduce.
Okay.
I guess replacements instead of new hires, but they're back.
Right. Okay, yeah, that closed up, thank you.
Okay, so, are there questions on fire EMS part of the budget? So this is page 42 and 43. Thank you, Jared.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, 43, the last line item, it says to general fund. And this year, there's no actuals. So what is that?
that's a Danielle.
That's a Danielle.
Stand for Danielle.
Yeah.
So, to general fund is the portion that the EMS fund pays to have all of the services that we perform throughout the year. It's a year-end entry, so we do it right at the end of the year to move that fund to take that expense over. And it covers things like processing payroll for EMS, processing and maintaining all their bank accounts, doing all the reconciliations throughout the year, their billing, the ambulance, all of that
Okay.
together is the fee that we back charge to the general fund.
Okay, so that will go up. because-
Sorry, back
Yeah,
EMS pays to the general fund.
all right. End of year, okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Chief? So what I want to ask the committee, there are 2 more meetings planned. There's a meeting for December 5th and there's a meeting for December 19th. I would like to call the department heads back on the 19th and save them the 5th. The 5th, we can talk about Grassmere Village Water, Goffstown Village Water, and send the school budget to public hearing. So we'd have the school back next Tuesday, and the town back on the 19th. So because we're waiting on the 19th is because there are some collective bargaining agreements that we haven't received yet, so that's why we're holding back. So my hope is on Tuesday, we can send the budget to public hearing, minus any changes we make, and we have to send both village water precincts to public hearing as well as any warrant articles the school will come up with, so the capital reserve fund, among other things. So, go ahead, Sam.
Are you looking for a motion?
No, I'm asking the committee, is that okay?
Sounds great. Thank you, committee.
This is my decision, but I guess I want to get like,
Exactly, it's your decision.
okay, great, so is, go ahead, Lauren.
Did we have an 8th provisioned as needed, and you're saying that we can't do the 8th because the CBAs won't be?
We need to wait for the CBA,
Okay,
that was.
so you're planning on doing the 5th to hopefully finish both the town and school deliberations and send them?
Just school.
I'm just thinking a week before the 19th to bring all the department heads back for the week before the Christmas holiday.
No, I understand, but I just got feedback from Danielle that we're not going to get these CBAs until later in December anyways.
Right, but I'm wondering could the 5th be, and obviously if the deliberations go long, they go long, but could a 5th possibly be the target for town and school deliberations to hopefully send it off at that point, and then the 19th would be a short CBA final items? That way we don't have,
That's
just
up to the
throwing it out
committee.
there.
I mean, we
Well, it's up
could,
to you.
I just don't want potentially the department heads to have to come back definitely for 2 meetings. I anticipate there'll be quite a bit of discussion on Tuesday, so it depends how late you'd like to be here.
I'm good.
Okay, what does the committee think?
Yeah.
Well, can I just say?
Go ahead, Peter.
My thoughts are, you want to have as much in front of you to look at when you're reviewing, and if it's on the town side, and you're going to have 3 contracts to look at, to compare, and look at the total budget, you may want to just wait until we have that stuff in front of us. And don't forget, on the January 9th, somebody could dump something on us too. A warrant article with money in it. So,
Okay, Lauren.
I mean, we've got contracts on that date.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's just why I was thinking get the bulk of what we already have in our hands done the 5th, and then the 19th is reserved for your last minute stuff.
I hate to say play it by ear because I don't want the department heads to have to come back, but
That's what I was saying, the 1-day 5th, but that, I'm not expressing myself
I mean,
correctly.
school board, we get a school board perspective.
Yes, school board. Glad I represent everybody. No, I mean, we've gone through the operating budgets. I think, what some people said at our meeting when we concluded the school budgets is we wanted to see everything at once. Now we're trying to break away from that and say we're going to see school board and then we're going to see town afterwards.
Okay.
If we're going to do it together, let's do it together,
All right.
because that's what we looked at. So
All right, so
I'm
Danielle.
good with operating budgets, and then later on, if we want to look at collective bargaining and any other warrant articles for that second meeting on the 19th, it'll be a quick meeting. I like it.
All right, so let's plan on doing a long meeting on the 5th. Sorry it might be a longer meeting, but that's what the committee's decided. Is that okay?
I don't know if that's what the committee
Yeah, I
decided.
mean, that was just
I just
me
wanted to say,
speaking.
I kind of feel like,
didn't hear that.
Mr. Chair, I kind of feel like maybe we should take a kind of, maybe a proposed
Yeah.
round robin to see what people think, because
Okay.
I'm
Yeah, I mean-
processing as we're talking, and I'm really not ready to make a decision.
I'm trying not to talk about this all night, so, Brian, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for my benefit, instead of suggesting striking the deliberations for school board, you're saying, not striking deliberatives, but going public hearing. What I'm hearing is that we're still going to keep the deliberations for school on the 5th.
In town.
And town.
That's what he's proposing.
Does that?
But not just me.
They're proposing.
tired of these numbers all at once,
Yeah.
being there.
I just
Okay.
don't want to go right to public hearing without the last.
You want to do it all at once? So do you want a longer meeting on the 19th?
Whatever the committee wants. I just don't want to miss the opportunity for,
Deliberations.
yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Go ahead, Danielle, and then Allison.
The 2 water precincts are scheduled to present on the 5th.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't recommend entirely striking that meeting because that affects 2 other entities as well.
Okay, Allison?
Could you just clarify a little bit for someone who's brand new,
Mhm.
what exactly the school budget deliberations then does?
So
On the
we've
5th,
been
like-
deliberating on the school budget.
that's
So
my-
we as a committee need to move both budgets, school budget, town budget, all warrant articles, and Village Water Precinct, Grassmere Water Precinct, all of that needs to be moved to a public hearing, which I have scheduled for January 9th, right, Danielle?
Right.
January 9th. So we need to all move that as a committee, so that's not like, that's so we can hear from the public after. So my question is.
We're done discussing it at that point.
No.
No.
So we move it to public hearing, we listen to the public, and we then vote on final recommendations for the March ballot. So we can make any changes after the public hearing, and we will have a meeting the 9th after the public hearing to make final changes if needed. So that's kind of the rest of the budget, but the only problem is where the town is not going to be ready to be approved until at least the 19th.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm getting told. Stacy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify a little more, generally by that point, we've had a good idea of what the budget's gonna look like, so that's why we do these 2 deliberative things. So this next meeting, we can talk about the school more and decide if that's what we really wanna move forward, or we can talk about the town. And my follow-up is, we kind of proposed 3 ideas. We keep them separated, like you're suggesting, or we do a long meeting on the 5th and a long meeting on the 19th. So I think that's 3 different things that people have brought up here.
Yes,
So
the long meeting on the 5th will be tough because the town budget will not be entirely right.
That's not true.
The
The
town-
operating budget is currently here,
The only thing we're waiting for is CBA's, correct?
and any award article.
And final.
Right.
Right.
But
that's-
my
those are
point
separate,
has
right?
always been, as I've stated before, even with Jared, is that I think, me personally, and I've only been doing this a while, but I like to be able to look at the whole package. What's the school package going to look like? And what's the town package going to look like with the ZBAs, and how much it's going to add to the tax rate? And things like, that's what, and I just think when you try to do everything together, it gets towards 10 o'clock when you're still here looking at these numbers, you kind of tend to say, ah, screw it, just move on, instead of doing what I believe is our job, which is staring at the numbers, coming up with a plan. But that's, just the way I look at it. I don't like to stay here till 11 o'clock at night, which I've done, so.
I agree. I just feel the unspoken thing there is, well, if these town and CBA things come in high, then we should look at cutting this budget and that budget. And that's not really our job. Our job is to look at the school on its separate legs, the CBA on its separate legs, and the town on its separate legs to go, did they do all their due diligence? Did they
And
cut
in
where
December-
they needed to, and let's
I
do
get
that.
it, you're right, but in December, it's one tax bill. When you get your tax bill, it's the one. People don't look at it, well, the school's this and town's this. Some people may, but
We're oversight, but yeah.
I'm gonna let Laura jump in.
Thank you. So I think I'm a little confused by what you said, because you said it was important, and correct me, you said it was important to look at everything together, but then you said you didn't want to have a long meeting where we looked at everything together, so I'm not sure.
no,
what
I'm
we're
talking
supposed to
about the
do.
town and school. I'm saying, let's look at the school, right?
Yep.
And then I want to look at the town with the contracts and
stuff.
all that.
Okay.
So you wouldn't want to look at part of the town on Tuesday and then part of it on the 19th?
Well, that's what you're talking about doing.
Right. I'm not, but,
It's your call.
so, all right, so it is my call, but I'm gonna get a show of hands. Who is in favor?
Can you tell me what all the options are?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
even ask the options.
Option one, we have a long meeting on the 19th.
How about our chair decides and then at least half of
Well,
us.
he's asking for consensus.
The long meeting can only happen on the 19th because that is when I believe the whole budget is ready. I'm not going to entertain, I do not think, approving part of the budget and then leaving the rest of it. So the long meeting on the 19th, or we split it up, a meeting on the 5th to discuss school and water precincts, or a meeting on the 19th, and a meeting on the 19th to discuss town.
Two options.
Two options.
Can you say them again, please?
Okay. Option number one, we talk about the school and the water precincts on Tuesday. Or option number two, we have a very long meeting on the 19th.
And then what happens on Tuesday?
Nothing. We have a very short meeting.
Because it's just the water.
Just the water precincts. Okay, so option one is the one that I presented, the two meetings, half and half. And option two is the long, long meeting. Long. All right, all those in favor of option one? All those in favor of option two? Okay, so that is a consensus. Sorry, Brian.
It's okay.
So our meeting on Tuesday, we're going to do three things. We're gonna move hopefully, we're gonna move the Grassmere Village Water Precinct, Goffstown Village Water Precinct, and the school budget and warrant articles to public hearing.
No, that's not what you said.
Well, I have the budget. We haven't, we have a school board meeting on Monday. We may bring a warrant article forward, but I haven't seen the agenda for that yet.
We've discussed, the plan is for a capital reserve fund request, correct?
We have not submitted a capital reserve fund request.
So if there happens to be something on Tuesday, we can talk about that as well. Okay.
But technically, they could bring that in on January 9th.
Yep, they can as well.
Dump it on our lap.
Yep. Go ahead, Danielle.
Just a procedural clarification, the budgets get moved to the public hearing, the warrant articles do not get moved to the public hearing. This budget committee hears about those warrant articles, they make recommendations after the public hearing, but they do not make motions to move the warrant articles.
Okay, great, so that's good clarification. So we have four moves to make, and they're not warrant articles. So, department heads, let's plan on the 19th, and then we'll deal with school on 5th, okay? All right, is there a motion, anybody?
I'd like to make a motion to close.
Adjourn?
Adjourn.
Okay, motion
Whatever.
by Sam, second by Frank. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Good
we're
job,
adjourned.